Chapter 1541. The Might of a Gaze. Will I really just die like this? Will I be reduced to a puppet controlled by someone else in the future? As she gradually approached death, she felt both liberated and intense regret. She still held unforgettable feelings for the Kaler tribe that had raised her. She struggled to forget her father who had cared for her. The destruction of the Kaler tribe had also been the most sorrowful part of her life. Even if she died now, she would be liberated since she would never forget about the Kaler tribe as long as she lived. However, she did not want to become a puppet controlled by someone else after death. However, the difference in strength between her and an Origin Realm expert was just far too large. Even though she was filled with regret, she was powerless to make a difference. Kaya's consciousness became blurrier and blurrier. However, the intense agony from her collapsing soul grew duller and duller. Her sense of pain gradually vanished as she inched towards death. Shi Yang was extremely stern. He had learned the method of creating a puppet from an ancient book. He had never used it before, so he was very careful with it. The rate Kaya's soul was collapsing at was extremely slow. He was afraid that he would make the entire thing collapse if he was not careful. If he had the time, he would have never tried creating a puppet in such a hurry. He would have definitely captured some Saint Emperors and experimented on them so that he could gather enough experience before trying it on Kaya. However, he just did not have that much time to experiment. He had no idea when the other protectors or elders of the Sacred Spirit Hall would notice Kaya as well. Once Kaya caught the eye of someone stronger than him, he would not be able to beat them with his strength, which was why he took her away in such a hurry. He wanted to turn Kaya into a puppet in the shortest amount of time possible. He wanted to control the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast and the endless soaring ants. Once Kaya turned into a puppet, she would belong to him. At that time, even if elders were interested in her, he had no need to fear because the current Spirit King would never let Origin Realm experts fight among themselves. As Kaya's soul collapsed, Shi Yang sent a sliver of his own soul into Kaya's sea of consciousness as well. He used the power of his own soul to protect the remainder of Kaya's soul, which he would use to make a puppet. When a sliver of Shi Yang's soul entered Kaya's sea of consciousness, he became stunned. He discovered, to his surprise, that Kaya's soul was not strong but her sea of consciousness was extremely vast. It seemed like a limitless universe, unbelievably tremendous, making him feel like it was boundless. What kind of sea of consciousness is this? Why is it so large? Shi Yang was completely stunned, deeply shocked by the size of the sea of consciousness. At that moment, he felt like he had not arrived in a person's sea of consciousness but a whole different universe. He had never seen such a tremendous sea of consciousness. In fact, he had never even heard of one. His Origin Realm soul seemed so puny in her sea of consciousness, like an ant that lived beneath the sky. At this moment, a dazzling light appeared in the depths of the sea of consciousness, spreading through it at an unbelievable speed. In a short moment, her entire sea of consciousness was occupied by the light. It poured into every corner, lighting up everything like it was daytime. A hazy figure silently appeared in the endless stretch of white light. Her body was illusory and slender, only visible as a blurry figure as if she was covered by a divine light. The figure silently arrived before the strand of Shi Yang's soul. The figure did nothing, but Shi Yang's soul miserably shrieked. The part he had sent into Kaya's head actually collapsed at that moment, reduced to pure power, which had fused with the hazy figure. Shi Yang vomited blood outside the sea of consciousness. His face became extremely pale. It lacked a shred of blood. Great fear filled his face as well. What the hell was that? Shi Yang wildly bellowed inside his mind. The hazy figure had actually wiped out a portion of his soul without finding it difficult. He did not even know how that sliver of his soul had been annihilated. All of its power was just perfectly drained away. He was fearful of something so strange. Without any hesitation, Shi Yang immediately turned around to flee. At that moment, he completely lost interest in killing Kaya. The only thought in his head was to flee, to leave as quickly as possible. It was also at that moment when Kaya suddenly opened her eyes. Blood dripped from between her eyes, but her gaze was utterly terrifying. Just her gaze possessed unbelievably great power, and with just that glance, the space 1,000 kilometers away collapsed. Any mountains in the surroundings turned to dust at that moment as well. Only the mountain Kaya stood on remained, becoming the only one in a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Shi Yang's body had disintegrated as well. He lost his mind in a single moment. His powerful soul was pulled back into Kaya's forehead as pure power. Under this gaze, an Origin Realm expert had died without even being able to put up a fight. Even Shi Yang himself had no idea what he had been killed by, right up until his death. Shi Yang's body disappeared from the surroundings. There was no corpse, only a pile of dust that fell from the sky. It joined the dust from the countless mountains, making it impossible to locate his remains anymore. At this moment, Kaya slowly raised her head. She stared into outer space at the tremendous formation hidden. It trembled violently when her eyes landed on it. This was the powerful formation that Protector Shui had secretly cast along with the help from the Ice Goddess from a whole different world. It actually showed signs of collapse at that moment, unable to withstand the gaze that came from Kaya. Her gaze was just far too powerful. Even the fate of the world could be decided by it. The presence of the Ice Goddess, Kaya stared at the huge formation and murmured. But the next moment her body shook violently, almost falling down. The light in her eyes rapidly dulled as well. "I'm too weak. This is still not the time to awaken." Kaya's voice became extremely soft. Her body shook a few more times before she closed her eyes and fell into a coma. At the same time, Protector Shui, who sat on a bed of ice in the Ice Goddess Hall, suddenly opened her eyes. Her cold, merciless eyes became filled with shock, and she became flustered at that moment. She vanished a moment later and reappeared outside the Ice Goddess Hall. She stared into outer space in shock. The expression she made under her helmet became solemn, an emotion she rarely ever showed. Chapter 1542, Ouyang Yangwon? Who is it? Who has discovered this place and almost caused the formation to collapse? Protector Shui raised her head as she stood on the divine hall. She seemed to have fused with the surrounding space, but she was no longer as calm and composed as before. She no longer seemed to possess the confidence that came from having the entire world in her control. She was instead filled with surprise and shock. With a single movement, Protector Shui appeared in outer space. She was far away from the Tianyuan continent. The massive planet where the Tianyuan continent lay only seemed to be the size of a head. Protector Shui glanced around the area around her and scattered the senses of her soul in attempt to find any traces or marks. However, she found nothing after searching for quite some time. She did not find any presences that could cause the formation to collapse or any unique pulses of energy either. This person shouldn't be from this world. They almost caused the formation to collapse, which means they used power beyond godhood. Such great power will never be allowed by the laws here, so the laws definitely would have rejected it and caused huge ripples. It's impossible for this place to be so calm. Unless that person's actually a Grand Prime, which is enough for even the laws of this world to shake in their presence. But even if a Grand Prime has come here and has done nothing, a large region of space would have collapsed. The space here is perfectly fine and calm, so a Grand Prime definitely did not come personally. With that being the case, that person's definitely still in the Saints' world. I wonder who has discovered this place and whether they're a friend or foe. In the past, before the Ice Goddess, Her Majesty, had found the world where the Snow Goddess, Her Majesty, would reincarnate, she had asked a few old friends to search with her. If the expert who has just found this place is a friend, then I have no need to worry, but if they're an enemy, Protector Shui became extremely stern. She silently vanished and crossed a huge distance, reappearing in a secret room within the Ice Goddess Hall. With a wave of her hand, the door was shut tightly with a heavy sound. Protector Shui was now seated in the center of the room. An indescribably tremendous pressure radiated from her body. It was countless times more powerful than anything a returnance expert could exhibit. If even just a trace of it managed to leak out, the world would change and space would shatter. The Tianyuan continent would be reduced to pieces, disappearing from existence entirely. However, The pressure was completely locked up in the room. None of it leaked out at all. It was not even able to shake the room. Protector Shui was solemn as her eyes glowed. Her hands constantly formed seals before her chest. Extremely great power would radiate from each seal. This power exceeded the origin realm, belonging to godhood. In fact, it was power equivalent to the very apex of godhood. She was holding a clairvoyance in an attempt to find out whether the expert from the higher world was a friend or foe. She did not directly look into the expert's identity. She knew that they were extremely powerful, far beyond something she could search for. If she tried forcefully, she would fail and suffer a dangerous backlash. She might even be noticed by the expert. As a result, she took an indirect approach. She looked for some information that would allow her to deduce the expert's identity and find out whether they were on her side or not. This was extremely important. It was directly connected to the survival of the snow goddess, so she could not afford to be careless. Protector Shui's actions and the changes to the terrifying formation that sealed the world did not catch the attention of Jianqin or the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. They had no idea what had just happened. Only Fairy Hao Yu in the Bright Moon Divine Hall noticed the changes. She opened her eyes the same time Protector Shui did. She then gazed into outer space. Although she was just a soul, her gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the walls of Divine Hall. She saw the moment that the formation was about to collapse. Fairy Hao Yu's face was also rather stern, but she returned to normal, like nothing had happened at all. The great battle on the Tianyuan continent was extremely intense. The army of the four races grew weaker and weaker. They sustained extremely heavy casualties, and the shockwaves of battle between so many Saint Emperors and Origin Realm experts had already damaged the continent. The entire continent constantly shook as cracks spread across its surface, like chasms leading to hell. The beautiful continent was divided by the cracks. It was no longer whole. It had been split into 4 sections by 4 extremely thick cracks. As Jian Chen's wounds gradually healed, he gradually gained the upper hand against the mid-returnance expert he was fighting in outer space. Killing his opponent would become certain once he made a full recovery. Suddenly, a powerful strand of sword chi shot out of the tunnel with a chilling killing intent. It tore through the sky, like a dragon, sweeping through an entire region. It wreaked havoc, causing space to collapse and the ground to shake. It was so powerful that it suppressed all the experts on the battlefield, catching the attention of countless people. They were all surprised. "It's Elder Ouyang. Elder Ouyang has come. I'd like to see how this person withstands Elder Ouyang's rage." All the experts of the foreign world immediately cried out while the receival protectors all let out a breath of relief. They knew how powerful Elder Ouyang was. As soon as he entered the battle, there was no one in this world who could stop him. Elder Ouyang walked steadily out of the tunnel. His face was sunken while a sea-like presence permeated the surroundings. Within it was uncontainable anger. He was Ouyang Yangwen, the strongest beneath the Spirit King in the world of Forsaken Saints and the Great Elder among the 8 Returnance Elders. His status was only second to the Spirit King. Yet as soon as he arrived in this world, he had been trapped by the treasure that had originated from their own world. He even had to be carried away by Xiong Zhong, someone he never got along with. How could he endure that humiliation with his pride? This was an embarrassment. It was a permanent stain to his name. "I will make all the Origin Realm experts of this world kneel before me. I will only ease my anger then." Ouyang Yangwen's face was sunken. He spoke very gently, but his voice was able to penetrate everything. It resonated throughout the world, and even the experts fighting in outer space could hear it clearly. Chapter 1543, Onslaught 1. The people from the world of Forsaken Saints were in high spirits after listening to Ouyang Yangwen. Even the Origin Realm experts from the foreign world possessed a certain level of blind faith in Ouyang Yangwen, let alone the Saint Emperors. It was not because of how respectable he was but because of his power. The Origin Realm elders and protectors who understood Ouyang Yangwen from the world of Forsaken Saints knew just how great Ouyang Yangwen's battle prowess was. Although he still belonged to late returnants, he had gained some rough comprehension of the way of the sword. He had not truly begun to comprehend the way of the sword like the Spirit King, but being able to comprehend a little was already extremely impressive. Some of the protectors and elders even believed that Ouyang Yangwen possessed the strength to fight those who had just broken through to reciprocity. Jian Chen's face slightly changed in outer space. He suddenly turned his head toward the Tianyuan continent. Even though the Tianyuan continent was tiny in his eyes, he saw Ouyang Yangwen with a single glance. His face sank. I never thought that Ouyang Yangwen would break free so soon. That Spirit King from the other world must have released him from the disc, Jian Chen thought. He could feel just how bad the situation was. While in peak condition, his battle against Xiong Zhong had been rather difficult, yet Ouyang Yangwen's strength superseded Xiong Zhong's, not to mention the fact that he was still injured right now. He probably would not be Ouyang Yangwen's opponent even in peak condition. Suddenly, Ouyang Yangwen attacked. He opened his palm and a finger-sized sword immediately condensed. It hovered above his palm, and the next moment, it suddenly expanded from the size of a toothpick to the size of a standard sword. It shone with a sharp light. With a twist of his wrist, Ouyang Yangwen gripped the sword. At that moment, the sword immediately erupted with an extremely powerful ripple of energy. The surroundings shook and the ground cracked under the ripple of energy. He took a single step and his entire presence suddenly skyrocketed. He stabbed out. A humongous sword chi left the sword with a devastating might. It turned the space it moved through into darkness as it shot toward Changyang Mingyue. Ouyang Yangwen's first target was not Jian Chen but Changyang Mingyue. Changyang Mingyue's clothes were as white as snow and her silver hair fluttered despite the absence of wind. A sternness filled her beautiful eyes at that moment. A new ability had appeared in her head. It was similar to when she had used the domain of the snow goddess and by fate earlier. She had no inkling of it at all, but it had suddenly appeared in her head. Before Changyang Mingyue had any time to think about it, she immediately used the ability that had suddenly appeared. She extended her left index finger and a strand of snow-white profound ice chi drifted out. She quickly drew a circle before her, and as soon as the circle was completed, it turned into a mirror of ice. It shot toward Ouyang Yangwen, who stood near the tunnel, and the sword chi that drew near. The sword chi and ice mirror collided. The mirror immediately flashed with a white light. Silently, a crack appeared on it, which spread outward like a web, covering the entire mirror in a single moment. In the end, it shattered with a clink. The moment the mirror shattered, Changyang Mingyue grunted as well. Blood spurted from her mouth. At the same time, the sword chi seemed to bounce off the mirror. It shot back toward Ouyang Yangwen, but it was half as powerful as before. A gleam of light flashed through Ouyang Yangwen's eyes as he smiled. He said, "Interesting. I've never seen an attack like this before, reflecting my sword chi back at me." With that, Ouyang Yangwen shot out a second sword chi. It was slightly more powerful than the first, so when it collided with the reflected sword chi, it produced a great boom. The reflected sword chi dispersed while the second sword chi continued toward Changyang Mingyue without slowing down at all. Changyang Mingyue clenched her teeth and created another ice mirror, but this time, it failed to reflect the sword chi. It shattered to pieces and the sword chi passed through Changyang Mingyue. Changyang Mingyue coughed up blood 3 times as she was blown back. She was severely injured. Ouyang Yangwen raised his sword above his head and immediately shot out a streak of light that was several thousand meters long. It stabbed into the sky, so from afar, it seemed like a huge pillar of light. It shattered space. Its surroundings were riddled with pitch-black cracks. It cleaved to one side like it was unstoppable, headed toward Tai Ta. Tai Ta also became stern. His presence soared as a powerful battle intent gathered in his body. It condensed into an illusory axe above his head. As he raised up the glowing axe in his hand, it fused with the illusory axe and began to emit an even greater presence. Mysteries of war, destruction. Tai Ta bellowed. He swung his axe toward Ouyang Yangwen's streak of light with a dazzling, golden light. The power of the attack had far exceeded Tai Ta's personal strength. Even mid-returnance experts needed to face the attack seriously. Boom! The collision of the two attacks immediately erupted with a great boom. Terrifying ripples of energy swept through the surroundings as a storm of energy, causing all the space around the attacks to tremble and distort. The entire continent was affected. Having already been split into 4 pieces, a great region of the continent collapsed, immediately causing a supersized earthquake to form across the entire continent. Several cities collapsed 1,000,000 kilometers away. However, Ouyang Yangwen's attack had not been dispersed by Tai Ta's attack. A small sliver of it lingered, now only 3 meters long. It shot toward Tai Ta with a resplendent glow. Tai Ta's eyes narrowed. Faced with an attack at such a close range, it was too late for him to fight back. He immediately blocked it with his golden axe. With a boom, Tai Ta was blown away by a powerful shockwave of energy. Before he stabilized himself while flying back, a dazzling golden light immediately appeared on his left hand. He punched out toward Ouyang Yangwen in the distance and cried out, "Mysteries of war, void devastating hell punch." Chapter 1544, Onslaught 2. Tai Ta's punch did not possess any devastating might or powerful pulses of energy. It did not even cause any ripples in space. It seemed like a simple punch from an ordinary person. However, Ouyang Yangwen's eyes narrowed at that moment. Without any hesitation, he immediately shot back. The moment he retreated, the space where he had been standing silently collapsed, descending into darkness. Vaguely, a terrifying energy wreaked havoc there. It was invisible to the naked eye and seemed to be a part of space. Even the senses of the soul would struggle to discover its existence. It would only become obvious when it erupted. However, Tai Ta's attack seemed to have locked onto Ouyang Yangwen's presence. The energy that seemed to be a part of space chased after him in a hurry, causing the space wherever it passed to collapse. A cold gleam of light flashed through Ouyang Yangwen's eyes. There was a sliver of anger. He could sense that Tai Ta's true strength had not reached returnance yet. Just the thought of him, the greatest elder from the sacred spirit hall, being forced to dodge an attack from someone who was not even at returnance was unforgivable. Ouyang Yangwen suddenly slashed out. With his attack, the domain of his sword immediately expanded. It engulfed a radius of 300 meters, turning that area into a separate region. The space in that region gently trembled and began to collapse. The entire area was reduced to darkness. The strange energy from Tai Ta, which seemed to have fused with the space, dispersed as well. At the same time, Ouyang Yangwen continued without stopping at all. He seemed to have become a figure of light as he shot toward Tai Ta with lightning-like speed and soaring sword chi. He passed through Tai Ta's chest in a single moment, penetrating his body. Spurt! Tai Ta vomited a mouthful of golden blood. An extremely small wound had appeared on his chest as droplets of golden blood oozed out as well. Ouyang Yangwen's attack was extremely terrifying. Not only had he pierced Tai Ta's body with his sword, but his entire body had also passed through Tai Ta's body in the form of light, just like the sword in his hand. However, only a wound of 3 fingers long remained on Tai Ta. Tai Ta became extremely pale. His face was haggard. He tottered in the air before falling out of the sky. Ouyang Yangwen did not even glance at Tai Ta. With a wave of his sword, he produced a powerful sword chi that shot toward Xiao Jin. The sword chi struck Xiao Jin in the waist, cleaving him in two. Blood scattered through the air. Xiao Jin cried out painfully as the 2 halves of his body fell out of the sky at the same time. Golden blood spurted out constantly, appearing like rain. Jianchen witnessed everything from outer space. He saw a strand of sword chi pierce through his sister's chest. He saw how Ouyang Yangwen used a secret technique to pass through Tai Ta like a beam of light, giving him unbelievable injuries, and he also saw Xiao Jin cut in half by a single stroke. Jianchen became filled with rage with everything that had happened. He burned with anger and killing intent surged within him. Jianchen angrily roared out and abandoned his opponent. The azulate swords hovered to his left and right as Jianchen seemed to become a blinding divine sword himself. He let out a radiant glow as he charged toward Ouyang Yangwen. Worried about Jianchen's safety, the white tiger also abandoned its opponent. It produced a deafening roar as it charged toward Ouyang Yangwen as well. The 2 mid-returnance experts did not try to stop them. Instead, they sneered as they watched Jianchen and the white tiger leave. Was there anything that could not be dealt with if their elder Ouyang acted personally? The two of them even began to imagine Jian Qin and the White Tiger's outcomes. A cold light appeared in Ouyang Yangwen's eyes when he saw Jian Qin. Of all the Origin Realm experts from the Tianyuan continent, Jian Qin was the only one he hated because Jian Qin was the one who had used the disc to trap him, turning him into a joke and embarrassing him. In the end, he even had to be saved by Xiong Zhong, making him owe a favor to someone he had never gotten along with. Although Xiong Zhong and him had never held debts of blood, they had always been rivals. They had constantly gotten into various scuffles in the past. They were basically water and fire. Yet now, he actually owed Xiong Zhong a favor. That was not something Ouyang Yangwen could accept. I heard from Xiong Zhong that you're Jian Qin. You've also comprehended the way of the sword like the Spirit King. I originally planned on dealing with you last, but since you've come looking for your death, I'll grant your wish and send you on your way prematurely. Ouyang Yangwen's voice was very gentle, but it was icy cold, like facing against a viper. He felt true killing intent for Jian Qin. It had been countless years since killing intent like that had appeared in him. A sudden jolt of his sword produced a clang. The tip of Ouyang Yangwen's sword shook, and with a clear thrum, it shot into the sky as a streak of light. Jian Qin used a sword technique. The twin swords became several hundred meters long as their dazzling light melded together. They violently collided with Ouyang Yangwen's sword in an unstoppable fashion. Boom! A great rumble reverberated from the collision, becoming the only sound in the surroundings. The cries and sounds of battle were completely drowned out while the heads of a few Saint Emperors rang. Their ears bled. The twin swords rebounded and Jian Qin charged up to them. He caught the Ziying sword with one hand and protected himself with the light from the way of the sword. His body seemed to shine like a sun as he tore through the violent shockwaves of energy. He engaged in a great battle against Ouyang Yangwen. The two of them began fighting in the dark region where space had already shattered. From outside, only the flickering of light was visible. Fragments of sword chi shot in all directions like rain. Even though the two of them were inside a crack of space, the crack was unable to harm them at all. In fact, it did not even affect them. After a short while, the two of them had clashed several dozen times. Their fight was devastating, enough to dim the sun and kick up tsunamis. In the end, the two of them brushed past each other and came to a temporary halt. Droplets of blood had been flicked into the air. Each droplet was filled with powerful pulses of energy. Jian Qin was covered in blood. He had gained a few terrifying sword slashes on his body. One of them had passed through his chest completely while his right hand had turned into a bloody mess. Opposite him, many parts of Ouyang Yangwen's robes were ripped. His luxurious, white robes possessed specks of blood as well, except they did not originate from him but Jian Qin. Jian Qin, you really do have some skill. No wonder Xiong Zhong was defeated by you. It'd probably take me some effort to kill you if you were in peak condition, but killing you is a piece of a cake now that you're heavily injured, Ouyang Yangwen sneered. A heavy killing intent leaked out of his body. He did not even try to contain it. Chapter 1545. Driven to the end of the road, Jian Qin remained silent. He glared at Ouyang Yangwen and felt very heavy inside. He knew that Ouyang Yangwen was right. With his current injuries, it would not be difficult for Ouyang Yangwen to kill him. When he clashed with Ouyang Yangwen earlier, he was already using his full strength, hiding nothing at all while Ouyang Yangwen was just probing him. If Ouyang Yangwen had used his full strength in the battle before, Jian Qin would probably not still be standing. Ouyang Yangwen was just far too strong. Compared to Xiong Zhong, he was not just slightly stronger. At this moment, a deafening roar materialized. The white tiger had shrunk and become 3 meters long. Its snow-white wings were completely unfurled. Some inscriptions flickered on them. Each line of inscription hid mysterious and great power while the powerful force of slaughter covered its claws. The white tiger swung them at Ouyang Yangwen with a devastating might. The moment the white tiger attacked, Jian Qin moved as well. Even though he was extremely injured, his presence had not weakened at all. His face was cold as he charged toward Ouyang Yangwen like a powerful sword. He knew that the white tiger was not Ouyang Yangwen's opponent, so he needed to provide support. Ouyang Yangwen remained composed while facing the pincer attack from Jian Chen and the White Tiger. He said in surprise, "I never thought that there'd be two experts who've comprehended laws in this world. It's just a pity that your true strengths are just too low even though you've comprehended laws. If you had reached returnance, Tiger, even just early returnance, I would not be your opponent. Even some experts who've reached reciprocity won't be able to stand up to you, but it's a pity that you're at early receival." Ouyang Yangwen shook his head in pity. He looked at the White Tiger in shame. Comprehending laws at early reciprocity revealed a talent that was extremely terrifying. At least in the world of Forsaken Saints, there had been countless reciprocity experts who had appeared throughout history. Quite a few had reached the peak of reciprocity. Yet, the only one who had managed to comprehend any laws was the current Spirit King. However, Ouyang Yangwen needed to kill prodigies with such great talent. They had become enemies already, so if he did not eliminate them now and they managed to mature successfully in the future, they would become a threat. Ouyang Yangwen turned around and slashed out with lightning-like speed. His sword radiated with powerful killing intent. It darted out with a silver flash, moving toward the White Tiger's claws. There was the screeching of metal when the sword came in contact with the tiger's claws. When the force of slaughter on the claws came in contact with the sword, it rapidly vanished. It was the power of laws, but the difference in strength was just far too great. It was difficult for the power to pose any threats. In the blink of an eye, the White Tiger's force of slaughter was dispersed by Ouyang Yangwen. With a jolt, his sword immediately surged out with more sword chi, landing on the White Tiger's claws. Clang! The White Tiger's claws were extremely tough. When the sword chi struck the claws, it failed to cut through them. Instead, it created sparks, causing residual sword chi to shoot off in all directions. The White Tiger's body was not as tough as its claws. Its paws immediately became bloodied when the residual sword chi reached the center of its paws. Every strand of sword chi would punch a hole through its paws. Some of the sword chi had even reached its body, immediately disappearing into the tiger. The White Tiger shook and growled painfully. Its wings suddenly began to glow brighter at that moment. Countless inscriptions flickered and flashed, radiating powerful pulses of energy. Under the light, the wings seemed to join together and sharpen, becoming something similar to curved blades. They let out a dazzling light and appeared like the sun. Strands of a profound formation revolved around the wings, and with a flip from the White Tiger, the blade formed from the wings immediately shot toward Ouyang Yangwen with a terrifying force. A mysterious power immediately expanded, trapping Ouyang Yangwen where he was. Ouyang Yangwen's eyes narrowed. A smear of shock appeared on his face. Not only did he discover that he had been trapped by a mysterious power, but his comprehension of the mysteries of space, along with his connection to the energy of the world, seemed to have all vanished the moment the blade shot toward him. He could not sense the energy of the world at all. He had even lost control over spatial force. It had been forcefully severed away from him. What ability did this tiger use? It's so powerful. Is there anyone who can resist it if it's used against experts of the same level? Ouyang Yangwen became stern. The gaze he used on the White Tiger became filled with heavy killing intent at that moment as well. The more extraordinary the White Tiger was, the more he needed to kill it, or he would not be its opponent once it grew some more. With a tremor of his body, his power at late returnance leaked out without any restraint. It immediately allowed him to break free of the mysterious power, allowing him to use his sword to receive the attack. Boom! The White Tiger was completely blown away. Its fused wings separated once again and the white light rapidly vanished. Its winged dulled and all the inscriptions vanished. As the White Tiger shot back, constantly vomiting blood, it became haggard and was filled with weakness. Ouyang Yangwen's body shook a few times as well. He took one step back uncontrollably before stabbing out with his sword in a reverse grip, forcing Jian Chen away. Soon after that, he stabbed out a second time. His sword collided with the Ziying sword and immediately knocked it away. With that, Ouyang Yangwen followed up with another stab. This time he stabbed at Jian Chen's forehead in an attempt to kill him off. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. In that crucial moment, the Qing Suo sword flew over and blocked the attack targeting his forehead, allowing Jianchen to rapidly retreat. Jianchen, today will be the day you die. You will be the first expert I kill from this world. Once I end your life, I'll end the white tiger's life, Ouyang Yangwen said with a feminine tone. He stepped through the empty air and pursued Jianchen. A sliver of sorrow appeared in Jianchen's eyes. He glanced at the Tianyuan continent below. They were suffering in utter defeat. Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, Shaojin, and Houston were all heavily injured. Yang Lai, Guihai Yidao, and Feng Shaoan had vanished from the battlefield. The returnance expert, who had originally been fighting against Tai Ta, had left the battle the moment Tai Ta was heavily injured. He went to deal with Shangguan Mu. She was also heavily injured and covered in blood. Aside from Xiao Ling, who was fighting Gong Shiming in outer space, all the other Origin Realm experts of the Tianyuan continent had been heavily injured. Have we truly been driven to the end of the road just like this? Jianchen sorrowfully murmured. His homeland was behind him. If he could not stop them on the front lines, his parents, his relatives, his good friends, and all the people he knew would probably die. No, there's still a way, a chance to save the Tianyuan continent. I still have my final trump card and can turn the situation around. Even if I die, I will make the world of Forsaken Saints pay a heavy price. Even though the outcome will remain the same with the existence of the Spirit King, I will at least earn some time for the Tianyuan continent. Determination flooded Jianchen's eyes. With a thought, the azulate swords flew over and hovered above his head. They glowed with a blinding light. Chapter 1546. How dare you just scare me? Jianchen ran out of choices now that he had been driven to the end of the road. He could only fuse the azulate swords and erupt with devastating power. He would dish out a dazzling attack and turn the situation around. If he did not do that, then the Tianyuan continent would be doomed on this very day. Not only would he die, his parents, his relatives in the Changyang clan, Bai Lian, and the others in Flame City would probably all go down with him. He would probably end up in the same situation as the old master of the azulate swords after fusing them. He would not be able to withstand the great backlash and would die. However, dying like this would at least give him the power to kill Ouyang Yangwen, so at least Ouyang Yangwen would fall before him. He might even be able to kill all the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints currently on the Tianyuan continent and make the foreign world suffer heavy casualties, giving the Tianyuan continent some more time. Master, don't use the fusion of the twin swords. With your current strength, you won't be able to endure the backlash at all. It'll mean certain death. Master, stop. You still have the Inata Tower. You can hide in it and enter the chaotic streams of space. It'll allow you to survive. Master, you can't use the fusion of the swords. Your future potential is unlimited. You can't die here. Sensing Jianchen's intentions, the sword spirits immediately cried out in objection. Both of them were extremely worried. They were indestructible, so the fusion of the twin swords was unable to kill them. It would only return them to their weakest form, but Jianchen would definitely die because the backlash was deadly. When the azulate swords were ranked among the 10 great god artifacts from the Immortals world, even one of the grand exalts of the Immortals world was unable to withstand the backlash. Even though the swords were only immortal artifacts now, nowhere near god artifacts, the backlash was still not something Jianchen could withstand right now. They did not wish to witness Jianchen die because they had seen a glimmer of Jianchen's future. If Jianchen matured successfully, he would definitely attain unbelievable heights in the future. Yet, Jianchen had stopped worrying about his fate. He could indeed survive using the method that azulate swords had told him to use, but he would never abandon his close friends and family just to survive by himself. The azulate swords had turned into 2 gigantic swords that hung above Jianchen's head. They were pointed at the sky and let out dazzling violet and azure lights, dyeing the entire region those 2 colors. At that moment, the swords completely outshone the sun, becoming the only colors in the surroundings. They illuminated the entire continent, turning everything violet and azure. At the same time, an extremely terrifying pulse of energy appeared. The pulse was so great that it made all the space around them tremble. It seemed to possess the power to cleave the sky and earth in half. It made the entire world tremble in fear. The moment that the terrifying pulse appeared, the intense battle on the Tianyuan continent immediately came to a halt. Everyone stared at the sky, which was dominated by azure and violet, in shock. The pulse had made all of them tremble from the depths of their souls, as if the end of the world had arrived. Xiao Ling and Gong Shiming could not help but stop fighting. They stared at Jian Qin in shock while Ouyang Yangwen's handsome, feminine face also drastically changed. He became extremely stern, and in the depths of his eyes, there was a smear of fear. He was the target that Jian Qin wanted to kill first, so the fear he felt was the most intense. The terrifying pulse gave him the feeling of death. The twin swords had not fused yet. Right now, they were in the process of fusing, and a complete fusion required some time to charge up. However, even though that was the case, the pulse that had erupted was enough to cause people to tremble in fear. Primordial chaos was divided into yin and yang. This yin and yang originated from chaotic force. The sword spirits were born from yin and yang, so if they fused, it would be a fusion of yin and yang, descending back into chaos. This chaos was true chaos. It was the most powerful force in existence and belonged to the birth of the universe. It could not be compared to Jian Qin's impure chaotic force. The Zi Ying sword and Qing Suo sword gradually drew together. Slivers of supreme yin force and supreme yang force leaked out, coming into contact with one another from time to time. They would immediately erupt with devastating ripples of energy. The power from the two swords became greater and greater as they fused. They ate away space, turning the region where Jian Qin stood into darkness. The space around him had shattered and collapsed. It would not close up for quite some time. Jian Qin gritted his teeth as veins bulged on his forehead. His entire body shook violently. In the past, he had attempted a fusion before, except that was only the fusion between two strands of sword qi, which had cost him his saint weapon, the light wind sword. He had also suffered extremely severe injuries when he did that. The fusion process was extremely easy since Jian Qin had experienced it before. The process should be the same as before, but when he attempted the second fusion, now involving swords, he discovered that it was an easy feat to fuse two immortal artifacts. The closer they got to one another, the more they would resist each other. The resistance would increase several-fold whenever he forced the swords closer, so it was an extremely difficult process. After all, the current twin swords were no longer the sword spirits that did not possess a physical form. Despite all that, Jian Qin's teeth remained clenched. Determination flooded his eyes. He had to fuse the swords and kill Ouyang Yangwen. The Zi Ying sword and Qing Suo sword both loudly thrummed, as if they were shrieking out in pain. As the swords drew closer and closer to one another, tiny cracks appeared on the swords as well. They spread in all directions, causing more and more cracks appeared. The power of the fusion was just too great. Even though the sword spirits had not recovered all their strength yet, the power from the fusion was still not something immortal artifacts could withstand. Ouyang Yangwen was not composed. He stared at Jian Qin with an ugly expression. He could clearly feel that death was rapidly drawing closer to him, frightening him. However, when he wanted to stop Jian Qin, he discovered, in shock, that he was unable to get anywhere close to Jian Qin. The pressure surrounding Jian Qin was just too powerful. It had annihilated space and also stopped anyone from getting close to him. Run! At this moment, a thought that Ouyang Yangwen had never even considered flooded his head, and that was to run. At that moment, he could no longer bother with his public image and dignity. He felt dread from the terrifying pulse. When his life was under severe threat, he would abandon his dignity without any hesitation. He no longer cared how people looked at him. He immediately turned around to run. Seeing how their elder Ouyang panicked, the other Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints were frightened to the point that they no longer dared to remain any longer. They stared at the terrifying pulses in the sky in dread as they abandoned their opponents, flying toward the tunnel as quickly as they could. However, when they arrived at the tunnel and were about to dive into it, the terrifying pressure in the skies suddenly vanished. The radiant azure and violet colors disappeared as well. The world returned to how it had looked earlier. In outer space, Jian Qin was sheet white. Blood spilled from his mouth, turning into a mist. The fusion of the twin swords had failed. All the Origin Realm experts, who were about to enter the tunnel, stopped due to the sudden change. They stared at the sky in doubt. When they saw Jian Chen's conditions, they were all stunned. Ouyang Yangwen was also stunned, but he returned to his senses. His face immediately darkened. He clenched his fist tight. Veins bulged on his arm as he roared out, "How dare you scare me?" Chapter 1547. The Divine Hall emerges. Whether it was Ouyang Yangwen or the other Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints, they were all monsters who had lived for several dozen millennia. They were knowledgeable, experienced, and possessed extraordinary insight. As soon as they saw what had happened to Jian Chen, they knew that Jian Chen's devastating attack had failed, perhaps due to a lack of strength. All the Origin Realm experts from the other world let out a sigh of relief. After all, the pressure was just far too great. It made them feel like an apocalypse was looming over their heads, frightening them all. They were very lucky that Jian Chen did not possess enough power to use this attack that they all feared. They were not certain that they could make it back to the foreign world if he had attacked. Ouyang Yangwen was completely enraged. He was someone who dearly cared about his public image, yet he had been embarrassed time and time again after arriving in this world. First, he had been trapped and immobilized by the treasure from his own world, forcing him to be taken back to the world of Forsaken Saints so that the Spirit King could personally remove the disc from him. And now, he had actually been scared into running away by the powerful presence of an ability that exceeded Jian Chen's strength, almost running all the way back to the world of Forsaken Saints. With his intelligence, he only needed to think about things calmly and would have discerned that it was impossible for Jian Chen to use such a powerful attack with his strength and injuries. Ouyang Yangwen had already seen that Jian Chen's true strength was not in the Origin Realm. He knew that it still remained at Saint Emperor. The reason why he possessed the power to fight late returnance experts was all because of the Way of the Sword and his two powerful swords. In addition to his powerful body and unbelievable recovery rate, he was able to put up a fight with experts in higher realms. The more powerful the technique, the greater the demand on the caster's strength. Thinking about it again, even if Jian Chen could use an extremely high-level technique with his strength, the power would definitely not be enough to threaten him, much less make him feel like he was facing death. Ouyang Yangwen could not help but feel his face heat up. This was just far too shameful. He almost felt the impulse to just hide somewhere and no longer see anyone ever again. He no longer had the dignity to face the other elders and protectors. Although they had all fled as well, he was the Grand Elder, the most powerful beneath the Spirit King. In his eyes, how could the other elders compare to him? Yet they had all clearly witnessed that the one who had fled first had been him. "Jian Chen, I will skin you alive." Ouyang Yangwen gnashed his teeth. His eyes burned with furious anger. A terrifying killing intent radiated from his body. It was extremely powerful. He had suffered twice due to Jian Chen, embarrassing himself twice. If Jian Chen had been an expert who had completely exceeded him in strength, he would have never become so furious. Yet, Jian Chen had not even reached the Origin Realm. With a tremor, the sword in Ouyang Yangwen's hand thrummed as he charged toward Jian Chen. Jian Chen was sheet white and covered in blood. He was still in outer space. His flesh had cracked open and web-like cracks crisscrossed across his body. Even though the fusion of the twin swords had failed, both him and the Azulite swords suffered an extremely severe backlash. The current Azulite swords were covered with cracks. They were dim as well, having lost their resplendent light from before. Jian Chen's chaotic body was heavily injured and covered in cracks. It was a vicious sight. Even his soul was heavily injured, making his head throb. He felt haggard and extremely weak. Jian Chen had truly injured the very core of his body. Even the chaotic body was unable to withstand the wounds. His battle prowess had drastically decreased. He would struggle to deal with receival experts, let alone a returnance expert. However, at this very moment, a region of space several 100,000 meters long suddenly collapsed above Mercenary City. It shattered, just like a mirror, and descended into darkness. An extremely powerful energy pulsed within the darkness. It spread across the entire sky. A huge shadow slowly emerged from the shattered space. It hovered above everyone like a huge blanket, blocking out the sun and causing the world to darken. It was a gigantic divine hall. It seemed just like a palace, beautifully decorated. White jade was used for the stairs, making it luxurious yet not any less dignified. It passed through the destroyed space as a tremendous pressure spread to the surroundings. When the divine hall completely emerged, it let out with a dazzling azure light, which enveloped the entire structure. It became obscured from view and seemed mysterious. Unknowingly, it seemed a little more otherworldly. Countless rare, unique beasts appeared in the azure light. They danced around the divine hall and let out various cries. There were divine dragons and phoenixes, beasts that flew and beasts that ran. There were several hundred different types of beasts, and a lot of them did not even appear on the Tianyuan continent. In fact, even the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints did not recognize more than half of them. With the addition of the unique beasts, the divine hall seemed even more extraordinary. It seemed like an immortal's palace from heaven. At this moment, a huge formation hovered out of the divine hall. As it revolved, it immediately exploded with azure light. Like scattered flowers, countless streams of azure light swept across the world, rapidly extending toward the foreign expert. The streams trapped all the Saint Emperors and surrounded a few Origin Realm experts. The azure streams moved far too quickly, almost the speed of light. The Origin Realm experts watched the streams approach them, but since they moved too fast, they were unable to react in time. All of them were tied up. Even Ouyang Yangwen failed to escape in the end. He too was tied up by several streams of light. The entire world sank into an odd silence at that moment, falling quiet in a single moment. Everyone stared at the huge divine hall in the sky and felt dazed. What divine hall was this? It possessed such power that it could tie up all the people from the foreign world in such a short moment. Ouyang Yangwen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared at the divine hall that was enveloped in azure light and had beasts revolving around it. Shock filled his eyes as he thought, how can this world possess such a powerful divine hall? Its attacks approached the speed of light, so how can anyone dodge it? Shortly after he questioned the hall, Ouyang Yangwen sensed the power of the azure streams around him. A gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes, and with a slight tremble, the streams around him turned to shreds. Ouyang Yangwen stared at the azure light that gradually disappeared into the surroundings. He involuntarily broke into laughter. So it's just like this. It has incomparable speed, but it's far weak. It can only keep Saint Emperors trapped. Stunned by that, the other Origin Realm experts used some of the Origin energy within their bodies and escaped. To no one's surprise, the azure streams which trapped them possessed incredible speed, but they were very weak. They were useless against Origin Realm experts. Everyone come here immediately. Pour your power into the divine hall. I am unable to make the divine hall exhibit its true power on my own. A vigorous voice yelled from the huge divine hall. It was very stern. It's Tianjian. It's Tianjian's voice. Is this the supreme divine hall from Mercenary City? Just how powerful is this divine hall? Even with Tianjian's powers as a Saint Emperor, he is unable to exhibit the divine hall's full power. Everyone on the side of the Tianyuan continent was taken aback when they heard Tianjian's voice. Some cries rang out and some people charged toward the divine hall despite their injuries. With others in the lead, no one else hesitated. It did not matter if they were injured or not. No matter how heavily injured they were, they all charged toward the divine hall as fast as they could in that moment. They wanted to pour whatever power they had left into the divine hall so that the divine hall could become even more powerful. Although the receival and returnance experts from the world of Forsaken Saints were still present, all the people from the Tianyuan continent were filled with confidence after witnessing its extraordinary appearance. The divine hall was accompanied by hundreds of beasts. Throughout history, countless divine halls had appeared, but none of them had ever exhibited something like this. At the same time, more than half of the beasts had never appeared on the Tianyuan continent, clearly not organisms of this world. The divine hall had been left behind by Mo Tianyun. Many people believed Emo Tianyun's strength belonged to the origin realm, but this was only a guess. No one knew what Emo Tianyun's true strength was. After all, there were only 4 experts in the ancient times. At the same time, Emo Tianyun had only ever fought against Erjins, the war god of the 100 races, and had emerged victorious in that battle. He had repelled the war god. There was also the fact that only Saint Emperors could refine the Supreme Divine Hall and that it took Tianjian such a long amount of time. This demonstrated how extraordinary the Divine Hall was. Being a Saint Emperor had only fulfilled the minimum condition of refining the Divine Hall. Chapter 1548. Might of the Divine Hall. All the human experts on the Tianyuan continent, regardless of whether or not they were Saint Emperors, Saint Kings, or Saint Rulers, all surged into the sky, headed toward the Divine Hall. They all understood that the power of the world of Forsaken Saints could not be stopped by the Tianyuan continent as things stood. They had entered a hopeless situation, yet now that the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City had appeared, the great disturbance it caused immediately gave them all some hope. They could only depend on the Supreme Divine Hall now. At the same time, the remaining experts from the magical beasts, the 100 races, and the sea race did not fall behind either. They also took to the sky and flew toward the Supreme Divine Hall as quickly as possible. Along the way, all of them secretly gathered their strength. They would pour it all into the Divine Hall without any hesitation once they were close enough, helping the Divine Hall exhibit its true power. Tianjian had said this in the language of the Tianyuan continent. Since the experts of the 3 other races had spent quite some time of the continent prior to the battle, they had already grasped the language, but the experts from the foreign world had no idea what Tianjian had just said. They relied on their souls to communicate with the people of this world, which allowed them to overcome the language barriers between the 2 worlds. When the Origin Realm experts discovered the 4 races flying toward the Divine Hall, they thought they were trying to seek refuge and avoid the calamity that was about to happen. They sneered while their eyes became filled with disdain. The Divine Hall had caused a great disturbance when it had appeared, but they had witnessed its power earlier. Even though it was extraordinary, it was only able to pose a threat to Saint Emperors. It was basically nothing to Origin Realm experts since they could destroy the attacks with a wave of their hand. As a result, they did not obstruct the people of the 4 races from approaching the Divine Hall. Instead, they hovered and watched everything unfold like it was a joke. In just a few short seconds, all the people from the armies of the 4 races disappeared into the azure light of the Supreme Divine Hall. Afterward, under Tianjian's orders, they all arrived near the Divine Hall and pressed their hands against it. They poured all the power that was in their bodies into the Divine Hall, channeling it through their hands. Immediately, the Divine Hall glowed even brighter. The light flooded the surroundings and filled the sky. The unique beasts conjured from the azure light seemed to consolidate even more. They seemed to be alive. They revolved around the Divine Hall, releasing various cries and calls. The Divine Hall's power immediately increased with the power from those people. More azure streams of light appeared around the Divine Hall. They shot toward the Origin Realm experts once again at an unbelievable speed. The azure streams moved at the speed of light. They were so fast that even Ouyang Yangwen, who had reached late returnance, was unable to dodge them. They arrived right in front of him in a single moment and tied him up like a hostage. This time, the power exhibited by the Divine Hall was far greater than when Tianjian had controlled it all by himself. It had gained the help of various experts. As a result, the streams of azure light were more powerful than before. The receival experts from the foreign world shook their bodies, but they failed to break free this time. Only the elders of the Sacred Spirit Hall managed to shake off the bonds as easily as before. The streams were still unable to trap them, but they could clearly feel that the streams of light were much more powerful than before. When the trapped receival experts sensed the toughness of the streams, their faces all changed. The Divine Hall's power had significantly increased with the addition of the sainthood experts of this world. It now possessed the power to trap receival experts, which was definitely bad news for them. Suddenly, a few receival experts yelled out while the origin energy within them surged out. They used their full strength to break free from the restraints of the azure streams. However, they still failed to shake off the bonds. The powerful origin energy only managed to loosen the streams by an inch. They were unable to shake them to pieces. There was even an expert who used his sword to slash at the streams when the bonds loosened. The azure light immediately shook, but it quickly stabilized itself once again. The strike failed to sever the azure streams. A cold light immediately flashed through Ouyang Yangwen's eyes. He glared at the obscured divine hall in the sky and coldly said, "You may have gained the support of a few sainthood experts, allowing the structure to become strong enough to trap receival experts, but it's still not enough to deal with returnance experts. Watch as I smash this divine hall." Ouyang Yangwen wielded his sword with his right hand. He fused with it, letting out a resplendent light, which tore through the azure light. He shot into the light with an unstoppable force, colliding with the divine hall. Boom! A deafening sound immediately reverberated away with the collision. Terrifying shockwaves wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing large regions of space to collapse. However, Ouyang Yangwen's face suddenly changed when his sword struck the divine hall. Disbelief filled his eyes. He felt like the structure before him was an indestructible fortress. Not only had the structure failed to crumble as he had imagined, but he failed to even leave a mark on the divine hall. It did not even shake. His strength at returnance was unable to do anything to this unimpressive divine hall. Shortly afterward, a great recoil force appeared, shaking Ouyang Yangwen's entire right arm until it became numb. His entire body was blown back as well. The supreme divine hall remained where it was, unscathed and still obscured by a dense azure light. It radiated with a tremendous pressure. Ouyang Yangwen became stunned by what had just happened. He stared at the divine hall in disbelief as his heart churned. Just what kind of divine hall was this? It was so tough that he was unable to damage it at all even with his strength. He had lived for several dozen millennia. He had seen and heard a lot of things in the world. Aside from the sacred spirit hall, he knew of no other divine hall that could match up to the one before his eyes right now. The other elders and protectors also became stunned. Their faces were filled with disbelief. With Elder Ouyang's strength, he could not even damage this divine hall at all. Just how powerful was this divine hall? This divine hall is powerful, but it's only a treasure. Treasures require an endless source of energy to continuously exhibit its powers, and the more powerful the treasure, the greater the consumption of energy. Since this divine hall is extraordinary, maintaining it is no easy feat. No wonder all those sainthood experts entered the divine hall earlier. I'd like to see just how long you all can last. Ouyang Yangwen understood everything very soon and immediately sneered. Chapter 1548, Driven Back, 1. The divine hall should be their final line of defense. It's so tough that I am unable to destroy it, but it's impossible for them to maintain it for very long with their strength. If we attack the divine hall without stopping and waste away their power, they won't be able to maintain it for long. I'd like to see what trump card they'll play. They lose the divine hall, said Ouyang Yangwen while sneering. He glanced at the returnance experts below him and said, "Elders, let's attack this divine hall. We might end up gaining a divine hall that might be on par with our sacred spirit hall." Ouyang Yangwen became excited. The power of the divine hall before them interested all of them. They all shifted their focus onto the structure, no longer paying any attention to the other origin realm experts from the Tianyuan continent. In the eyes of the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints, there were some experts with shocking strength from the Tianyuan continent, but whatever threat they posed could be handled by their elder Ouyang. Moreover, their world possessed an even more terrifying spirit king aside from elder Ouyang. If they obtained such a powerful divine hall and brought it back to the world of Forsaken Saints, it would be a deed of great merit even if they could not use it. Bringing back the divine hall would be countless times greater than contributing to the invasion of the other world. The other returnance elders did not object Ouyang Yangwen's command. They all attacked together, striking the divine hall as hard as they could. Booms immediately began to reverberate through the sky as terrifying pulses of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The pulses raised great gales, which kicked up the sand and dust on the ground, causing the sky to become gray and hazy. Large portions of the cracked continent collapsed from the barrage of shockwaves. They turned into bottomless chasms. They made it seem like the world was ending, facing destruction. Ouyang Yangwen sent several dozen sword chi toward the receival experts who were trapped in the azure streams of light, helping them break free. After regaining their mobility, the receival experts all joined the attack on the Divine Hall without any hesitation at all. Are you okay, Big Brother? You're bleeding so much. Big Brother, let's go into Master's Divine Hall. Xiao Ling stared at the bloody Jian Chen with tears in her eyes while choking back her sobs. With a wave of her hand, a ball of origin energy enveloped his body and pulled him toward the Supreme Divine Hall below as quickly as possible. Of all the origin realm experts who stood on the side of the Tianyuan continent, Xiao Ling was the only one who had not been injured. Neither side was injured when she was battling Gong Shiming. At the same time, Changyang Mingyue raised her head to look at the Divine Hall, which flickered with azure light. After hesitating, she also turned into a blur and shot into the Divine Hall. Tai Ta also rose up from the ground. He glowed with a layer of golden light, but it was extremely dim compared to before. He was pale and haggard as he weakly flew over to the Divine Hall. Xiao Jin flew up from the ground as well. He had been cleaved in two by Ouyang Yangwen, but his body had reformed. He was a spirit of metal. His body was condensed from a golden liquid, so rejoining his body was not difficult. The Empyrean demon orb hovered above Houston's head as it dragged his injured body toward the Supreme Divine Hall. When Ouyang Yangwen saw the origin realm experts from the Tianyuan continent fly toward the Supreme Divine Hall, he frowned and yelled, "The Divine Hall has become so powerful because of the addition of all those people at sainthood. If a few origin realm experts join in as well, who knows how powerful the Divine Hall will become? Stop them. We can't let them enter the Divine Hall." A few returnance elders from the world of Forsaken Saints immediately moved to stop Jian Chen from entering the Divine Hall. However, more streams of light shot toward them at an unbelievable speed. At the same time, the streams of light trapping the foreign Saint Emperors were withdrawn. After gathering some power, they turned into a stream that was even more powerful, which targeted Ouyang Yangwen. The elders of the foreign world were helpless against the azure streams of light. The streams were unable to pose a threat to them, but they did move very fast, exceeding a speed they could react to, so they were unable to dodge them. Whenever the streams of azure light shot toward them, they would end up trapped. At the same time, Changyang Mingyue entered the Divine Hall. Gaining the assistance of an early returnance expert, the streams of light became even more powerful. This time, the elders of the foreign world required more strength to break free from the bonds created by the streams. Ouyang Yangwen immediately failed to break free since the stream of light trapping him was the most powerful. With the delay, Jian Chen, Xiao Ling, Tai Ta, Xiao Jin, and Houston all managed to enter the Divine Hall, disappearing before the origin realm experts of the foreign world. Ouyang Yangwen's face became terrifying. He stared at the vaguely visible Divine Hall and gritted his teeth. Even if you've gained the support of several origin realm experts, they're all injured. It's impossible for you all to recover without taking a few months or years. I'd like to see just how long this Divine Hall can last. Not only will I flatten your world, I'll take your Divine Hall as well. Ouyang Yangwen and the other origin realm experts all attacked the Divine Hall as best they could. At the same time, Ouyang Yangwen ordered the Saint Emperors below. All Saint Emperors disperse and slaughter all fighters of this world. Remember, do not kill more than 1,000,000 people each in case of celestial decay. The Saint Emperor's eyes glowed with a bloodthirsty light. They immediately scattered in all directions. Tianjian's face immediately changed in the Supreme Divine Hall. Without any hesitation, he immediately controlled the power of the Divine Hall and sent streams of azure light toward the scattering Saint Emperors, immobilizing them all to prevent endless massacres across the world. Ouyang Yangwen could not help but laugh out loud. This was just what he had anticipated. He did not care whether the low-level fighters of the world died or not. His true intentions were to drain the Divine Hall's energy faster. Chapter 1550, Driven back, too. Tianjian sat on a seat made of white jade while he controlled the divine hall. Jian Chen, Xiao Ling, Xiao Jin, Houston, Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, and Shengyan Mu'er gathered around him. They continuously poured their powers into the seat so that the divine hall could erupt with even great power to fend off the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. With the support of several Origin Realm experts, the power of the divine hall immediately skyrocketed. The azure streams of light it conjured were enough to trap the receival experts of the foreign world. They could not resist the streams at all. Even the returnance experts were trapped. The two sides were locked in a stalemate for the time being. To everyone's disappointment, the divine hall specialized in defense. It possessed offensive formations, but their power was pitiful compared to its defenses. The offensive formations were nowhere near strong enough to kill Origin Realm experts. The expenditure of the divine hall is just too great. Coupled with the lack of origin energy in this world, once I use up all of my origin energy, it'll be extremely difficult to recover just by absorbing the energy of the world. It'll be extremely disadvantageous if this goes on for a long time. We might not last much longer, said Changyang Mingyue. She spoke very sternly. Even with the support of a great group of sainthood experts and several Origin Realm experts, the divine hall was unable to keep Ouyang Yangwen and the others trapped for too long. After all, the divine hall's offensive capabilities were insignificant. Just defending would not work. At the same time, keeping Ouyang Yangwen and the others trapped and blocking any attacks from them would expend the energy of the divine hall. Once it used up all their energy, the divine hall would become useless. At that time, even if Ouyang Yangwen and the others were unable to smash through the divine hall, they could take it away. The divine hall, without any formations or energy, would just be a tough and heavy building. Saint Emperors might not be able to withstand its weight, but it weighed nothing to the Origin Realm experts. Everyone frowned due to what Changyang Mingyue had said. Their complexions all became horrible. Jian Chen sank into his thoughts before a gleam of cold light flashed through his eyes. He said in a heavy voice, "This can't continue. You guys support the divine hall. I'll go heal. I'll leave the saint artifact here. We can take turns entering the artifact space and having the artifact spirit heal you." Jian Chen left behind the saint artifact and left by himself. He found a quiet place to focus on healing. The fusion of the twin swords had failed, but Jian Chen had still suffered a significant backlash. His injuries were severe since his body had almost collapsed. Even his soul was heavily injured. In a secret room within the divine hall, Jian Chen used a precious droplet of sap from a stalk of amethyst spiritual bamboo. He placed the sap on his forehead, and as soon as it came in contact with his skin, it silently seeped in. It turned into a cool presence that nourished his soul, allowing it to recover rapidly. At the same time, Jian Chen used the origin energy of a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master. Combined with his chaotic body, he healed as quickly as he could. The Origin Realm experts from the foreign world remained trapped in the azure streams while Jian Chen healed. Even Ouyang Yangwen was stuck within them, but even though he was trapped, Ouyang Yangwen showed no signs of anxiety at all. Instead, he sneered, "I'd like to see how long you last. There's no origin energy in this world. So once you use up all the energy you have, it'll be very difficult to recover." "Elder Ouyang, are we supposed to remain like this so that they continue to waste their energy?" A receival protector asked. Ouyang Yangwen glanced over and coldly replied, "Do you have any other ideas aside from wasting their energy now that the situation is like this? If we don't waste all the energy of the divine hall, we can't do anything to them. Even if I break free from these restraints by using my full power, there's nothing I can do to the divine hall." In the blink of an eye, a whole day passed while both sides remained locked in a stalemate. During that time, the foreign experts in the Origin Realm did not use much energy, but the divine hall continuously maintained the azure streams of light. They restrained the foreign experts and prevented them from attacking the divine hall and thus damaging the Tianyuan continent from the shockwaves. As a result, their expenditure of energy was extremely severe. Many sainthood experts had used up all their saint force and were currently meditating to recover. However, Their rate of recovery was nowhere near the rate of expenditure. As time passed, all the sainthood experts would begin to use up their saint force. The divine hall's power would weaken without their support. The current situation would become worse for the Tianyuan continent the longer it lasted. However, a figure suddenly charged out of the divine hall at this very moment. He was clad in a special light, which radiated with extremely sharp strands of sword chi. 2 swords, one azure and one violet, hovered above his head, shining with their respective color. They were much duller than before and were riddled with cracks. As soon as Jianchen appeared, he shot toward the returnance expert closest to him in an aggressive manner. His presence soared, causing the wind and clouds to churn. The returnance expert was the elder Zhang, who had faced off Agent Houston earlier. As he watched Jianchen charge toward him, his face immediately changed. Without any hesitation, he erupted with all his strength at returnance. He pushed the azure streams of light around him 3 meters away. At the same time, a sword appeared in his hand, and he stabbed out with it. Elder Zhang knew Jianchen's power, so he used his full strength from the first attack. He held nothing back. Jianchen had fully recovered from his wounds, now back in peak condition. The azulate swords were damaged, but he still could defeat mid-returnance experts with his full strength. The elder before him was only at early returnance, so as soon as they began fighting, Jianchen knocked Elder Zhang's sword out of his hand. At the same time, the Qing Suo sword shot forward with a flash of azure light and chopped off the elder's right hand. Elder Zhang grunted and attempted to flee. However, since he had just used his full strength, the azure streams were no longer kept away from his body due to the origin energy used in the attack. They immediately rebounded and trapped him once again. Oh no! Elder Zhang's heart immediately sank. However, the moment he thought that, he saw an azure flash. Without any hesitation, Elder Zhang abandoned his body and fled as quickly as he could in the form of a soul. He ran toward the tunnel in fright. Spurt! The Ziying sword pierced his head. Jianchen slammed his hand into the hilt, causing Elder Zhang's head to rupture. The Ziying sword turned into a violet streak of light, pursuing Elder Zhang's fleeing soul with lightning-like speed. Elder Zhang's soul couldn't flee as quickly as the Ziying sword. Seeing how he was unable to escape, he immediately cried out, "Elder Ouyang, save!" However, before he could finish what he was saying, the Ziying sword caught up and wiped out his soul. Jianchen did not pause after killing Elder Zhang. He immediately shot toward another returnance expert. Chapter 1551, Driven Back, 3. The other Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints watched Jianchen slay Elder Zhang. They were shaken, causing the elders to reveal drastically different expressions and the protectors' hearts to churn, almost losing their composure. Some of them feared and dreaded Jianchen. As a returnance expert, Elder Zhang had been felled by Jianchen's sword in less than 3 moves. Although Elder Zhang had been restrained, 3 moves was enough to indicate just how powerful Jianchen was. Jianchen had only needed 3 moves to kill Elder Zhang, who possessed the power to free himself temporarily. If he attacked any receival experts, would they not have to watch their deaths approach them since they were completely immobilized? Even if they fled in the form of souls, it would be difficult for them to avoid death. What happened to Elder Zhang was the best evidence. More and more people among the receival protectors from the foreign world realized this, and they felt fear, because they were not like the returnance experts at all. The returnance experts could temporarily free themselves from their bonds by exposing their full strength. Jianchen had already charged off toward a second Origin Realm expert from the world of Forsaken Saints. He targeted another elder, ignoring the receival experts for the moment. It would not be difficult for Xiao Ling, Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, or Houston to kill the receival experts. Only the returnance experts could threaten them. Now that all these returnance experts had been restrained, he needed to kill as many as possible. With every returnance expert the world of Forsaken Saints lost, the pressure the Tianyuan continent faced would lessen. Jianchen's second target was Qing Jingyun. She was a mid-returnance expert, but she had been heavily injured during her battle against Changyang Mingyue. She had not recovered yet, so her wounds remained, drastically impacting her strength. It would be relatively easier to kill her. Cheng Jingyun's eyes suddenly narrowed as she became solemn. She knew just how strong Jianchen was. Even Xiong Zhong, who was at late returnance, had been defeated by him. Even if she was in peak condition, she was not the opponent of someone so powerful, let alone right now, heavily injured and trapped by the azure streams of light. Cheng Jingyun could no longer bother with maintaining her wounds. She endured the outcome where her wounds would rapidly worsen as she erupted with her full strength. She pushed herself to her limits, forcing herself into a peak condition. She forced open the restraints. However, she paid a very heavy price. She vomited a few mouthfuls of blood and became even more pale. Her wounds rapidly worsened. She would not last very long at all. Cheng Jingyun gritted her teeth as determination flashed through her eyes. In this moment of life and death, just for a tiny chance of survival, she abandoned everything to face her opponent in her strongest form, not caring about harming the essence of her life. She swung her whip. As it flew through the air, it continuously grew longer, wrapping around Jianchen with an azure light. A dragon's roar seemed to erupt from the whip in the meantime. A cold light flashed through Jianchen's eyes. He swung the Ziying sword at the whip with a resplendent glow. The whip immediately exploded with azure light. The weapons produced sparks when they collided. The deafening roar of a dragon completely materialized at that moment along with the dragon's aura. At the same time, the moment the Ziying sword came in contact with the whip, it was wrapped up by the whip, which was several thousand meters long. It was like an agile viper that coiled around the Ziying sword. Jianchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He could not help but re-examine the whip. The whip was extraordinary. When his sword struck the whip, it felt like he had hit a dragon instead, producing sparks when they touched. The whip seemed to have been transformed from a dragon. Shortly after that, Jianchen violently shook his hand and the Ziying sword immediately exploded with light and sword qi. It broke free from the whip's restraints in a single moment. Wielding the sword in his right hand, Jianchen gently kicked off the whip with the tip of his toes and shot off toward Cheng Jingyun like a loose arrow. Cheng Jingyun's whip danced furiously in the air. The whip immediately turned and, at the end of it, the figure of an azure dragon appeared, preventing Jianchen from getting any closer. A shield that was 3 meters long and formed from the coiled whip appeared before Cheng Jingyun as well. Jianchen guarded himself with his special glow while he shot toward Cheng Jingyun as a streak of light. He used a single strike to disperse the dragon and moved through the air at an extreme speed. He approached Cheng Jingyun's shield like he was unstoppable. The Ziying sword glowed brighter. The tip of the sword landed on the center of the shield and immediately produced a great boom. The shield collapsed and Cheng Jingyun vomited blood. She was blown back, suffering a heavy blow. Heavy killing intent appeared in Jianchen's eyes. He immediately pursued, having made up his mind to make Cheng Jingyun fall under his sword. He did not go easy on her at all just because she was of the opposite sex. We need to assist Cheng Jingyun. He may be strong, but killing him is only a matter of a few attacks if we work together, a returnance elder reasoned out. Many people immediately erupted with their full strength, temporarily breaking free from their bonds. However, the streams of azure light expanded at that moment, erupting with an even greater force to keep the returnance experts trapped. The returnance experts were no longer able to break free in time to assist Cheng Jingyun. At this moment, a great boom rang out. Ouyang Yangwen erupted with surging power and struck the azure streams of light with his full strength using his sword, immediately causing them to disintegrate. The azure streams of light were able to trap mid-returnance experts, where they could not quickly break free even with their full strength, but it was rather difficult to keep Ouyang Yangwen trapped. After all, Ouyang Yangwen was just too powerful. His battle prowess was on par to those who had just broken through to reciprocity. He remained trapped out of his free will earlier in an attempt to exhaust the Divine Hall's power. After breaking free, Ouyang Yangwen charged toward Jianchen without any hesitation at all. A blood-red world appeared behind him as a scarlet sun, as red as blood, sank below the western horizon. A crescent moon, also red like blood, slowly rose from the east, rising high up in the sky. It radiated a demonic light. First transformation of the blood sun and crescent moon, force of sunfall. Ouyang Yangwen cried out. The blood-red sun in the bloody world behind him seemed to fuse with his body. He used its power to produce a shocking sword qi. The sword qi was completely red, possessing the power of the blood-red sun. It shot toward Jianchen with lightning-like speed and a demonic red glow. Chapter 1552, Driven Back, 4. Ouyang Yangwen used a secret technique this time. He wanted to kill Jianchen as soon as possible. The divine hall caused him a headache that was painful enough. If Jianchen also made trouble by killing all the Origin Realm experts trapped in the azure streams of light, their world would suffer significant losses. The world of Forsaken Saints could ignore the fates of Saint Emperors, but they needed to pay attention to the number of Origin Realm experts they possessed. Moreover, the azure streams of light moved just too quickly. Even Ouyang Yangwen was unable to dodge them. He would become trapped as long as they shot in his direction. Although he could break free from the restraints with his full strength, breaking free exacted an extremely heavy toll on his origin energy, especially if he had to do break free over and over again. There was no origin energy in this world either, so once he used all of his origin energy up, it would be extremely difficult for him to replenish it. This was also the reason why Ouyang Yangwen wanted to kill Jianchen so urgently. The blood-red sword qi let out a dazzling red light. It tore through space as it moved toward Jianchen with the power of the red sun. It produced a great disturbance, dyeing the entire sky blood-red. Ouyang Yangwen was much stronger than Jianchen. Coupled with a secret technique, he could erupt with even greater power, so Jianchen did not show any carelessness whatsoever. Jianchen watched Qing Jingyun shoot off while feeling some regret. He was so close to killing a second elder of the world of Forsaken Saints, but he needed to give up now. Suddenly, the twin swords seemed to recover their past power. They erupted with bright azure and violet lights. A dazzling white light mixed with the two colors. The white light emanated a soaring sword intent. This was the power of laws controlled by Jianchen, who was at the partial achievement of sword origin. Jianchen could no longer worry about whether the twin swords would become more damaged or not. He used his full strength along with a sword technique. The two swords became 300 meters long as they shot toward the blood-red sword qi with lightning-like speed. The collision between the two attacks immediately produced a deafening rumble. The blood-red sword qi possessed extremely great power. It knocked the huge swords far away. The sword qi continued toward Jianchen. It moved extremely quickly, arriving before Jianchen in a single red flash. However, the sword qi's power had decreased after being obstructed by the twin swords, so it was no longer as powerful as before. Jianchen's eyes narrowed. The sword qi had been drastically weakened, but he could still clearly sense that its power could not be underestimated. In that crucial moment, he backpedaled through the air and retreated, appearing several thousand meters away in the next instance. At the same time, he created a sword in his right hand. He used his powers at partial achievement sword origin, condensing the power of laws into a snow-white sword of light that was just as long as the twin swords. It let out a dazzling light. The sword he had condensed using his power of laws was not extremely powerful. In fact, much weaker than the twin swords due to his limited comprehension of the way of the sword, but the two swords had been knocked away from him and could not make it back to him in time. Condensing a sword was now the best method to block the remaining sword qi. Boom! The two strands of sword qi collided and immediately erupted in the air like resplendent fireworks. Countless strands of residual sword qi scattered through the sky like flowers, shooting off in all directions. Jianchen's sword qi dispersed, but a finger-sized sword qi from Ouyang Yangwen remained. It shone with a demonic red light as it passed through Jianchen's body. Jianchen's body shuddered. The power of the blood-red sun made the sword qi extremely hot, so the region where he was injured rapidly melted away. It turned into a fist-sized hole in the blink of an eye, heavily damaging his organs. Jianchen suppressed the wound with chaotic force and used radiant saint force to recover. First transformation of the blood sun and crescent moon, force of moonrise. Ouyang Yangwen cried out and continued to cast his secret technique. However, before he could cast the next part of the secret technique, with a flash of azure light, he was trapped by the streams of light once again. This time, the streams were even more powerful, pushing the origin energy that had enveloped Ouyang Yangwen back into his body in a single moment. At the same time, there was a flash of golden light from behind Ouyang Yangwen. Tai Ta had silently appeared behind him with his golden axe. Powerful battle intent conjured into a huge, illusory axe above his head. When it fused with the axe in his hand, it immediately erupted with an even more powerful presence. The axe was complete with both its form and soul. Tai Ta cleaved the air as it moved toward Ouyang Yangwen's head. Ouyang Yangwen's face suddenly changed. There had been no prior signs that Tai Ta would appear. He had sensed nothing at all earlier. If he had not been restrained, there was obviously no need for him to treat Tai Ta's attack with any importance, but now he could feel a strong threat. Be careful, Elder Ouyang. The other elders of the world of Forsaken Saints also noticed Ouyang Yangwen's predicament, so their faces changed and they all called out. Ouyang Yangwen's eyes exploded with light as he immediately bellowed out loud. Surging origin energy leaked out of his body without any restraint, causing the surroundings to shake and space to collapse. Even though his restraints did not break under his full strength, he pushed them 3 inches away. However, the golden axe touched his scalp. Dealing with such a close situation, Ouyang Yangwen only managed to parry with his sword above his head. The golden axe crashed down with the force of 1,000 tons as it smashed into Ouyang Yangwen's sword. The terrifying power knocked Ouyang Yangwen out of the sky and into the ground. Jian Chen also hurried over with lightning-like speed as a blur. He caught up to Ouyang Yangwen in a single moment and stabbed out with the Ziying sword. Ouyang Yangwen swung his sword and blocked the Ziying sword, forcing Jian Chen back at the same time. However, the Qing Sua sword managed to pierce Ouyang Yangwen's abdomen, passing through his body as an azure flash. It also deposited a sliver of the power of laws in Ouyang Yangwen's body. Ouyang Yangwen paled and vomited blood. He lowered his head to look at his abdomen. Disbelief filled his face as he mumbled while at a loss. I've actually been injured. Impossible, this is impossible. How could I be injured by them? Ouyang Yangwen struggled to accept this fact. He was the greatest elder from the world of Forsaken Saints, a late returnance expert only second to the Spirit King. However, he had just been injured by someone whose true strength had not even reached the origin realm. This was a great blow to Ouyang Yangwen's confidence. Tai Ta, go kill the other origin realm experts. I'll keep him busy, Jian Chen said to Tai Ta. He then charged toward Ouyang Yangwen. The azure streams of light were unable to keep Ouyang Yangwen trapped. In order to prevent him from disturbing Tai Ta while he dealt with the other origin realm experts, Jian Chen could only keep Ouyang Yangwen busy. Without any hesitation, Tai Ta charged toward the other origin realm experts. He knew that he was still slightly weaker compared to Jian Chen and knew that would have to expend quite some effort in order to kill returnance experts. Since time was tight, he did not deal with the elders and charged toward the protectors instead. The protectors from the Sacred Spirit Hall remained restrained. When they saw Tai Ta fly toward them, they immediately revealed different expressions. Some of them opened their mouths and cried for help from the elders. 2 elders temporarily broke free from their restraints and worked together to fight Tai Ta. With Tai Ta's strength, it was a little difficult for him to deal with 2 returnance experts at the same time. As a result, he was greatly suppressed as soon as they began fighting. At this moment, Changyang Mingyu appeared outside the Divine Hall. She immediately said, "Let me deal with them." Tianjian, who sat on the jade-white seat, suddenly opened his eyes. He said, "None of you can go out, or we might not be able to keep them restrained." With that, Changyang Mingyu paused. She hesitated before deciding to stay and provide energy to the Divine Hall to keep the other experts trapped. Tianjian gazed at the people around him and said, "I need everyone's full support so that the Divine Hall can display even greater might to keep the returnance experts trapped and giving Tai Ta time to kill the receival experts." With the death of every origin realm expert from the world of Forsaken Saints, there'll be less pressure on the Divine Hall to keep the others trapped. The few Origin Realm experts in the Supreme Divine Hall did not hesitate at all. They immediately placed their hands on the jade white seat. Their power surged out, making the Divine Hall even more powerful. The two Returnance experts fighting Tai Ta were trapped very soon. Without them, Tai Ta immediately charged toward the Receival experts. "Elder, let's work together and kill him," suggested a Returnance expert. "The restraints of the Azure Streams are even more powerful. We can temporarily break free with our strength, but we'll greatly exhaust our origin energy, and even if we do break free, we can only dish out a few attacks before we're trapped again. It'll be difficult to kill him with just those attacks," another elder replied with a heavy heart. Cheng Jingyun coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. She looked around and weakly said, "Elders, I'm heavily injured. I won't be of any help if I stay any longer, so I'll be leaving first." With that, Cheng Jingyun used a secret technique, burning her essence blood in exchange for great power to break free from the restraints. She did not look back at all as she entered the tunnel, fleeing back to the world of Forsaken Saints. Cheng Jingyun's departure was not met with any obstructions at all. However, now that she was gone, the azure stream of light that had been trapping her split into 6 and spread among the 6 other Returnance elders. Their facial expressions immediately changed. At this moment, there was a miserable cry. A Receival expert had died in Tai Ta's hands. His souls had been wiped out. However, the death of the Receival expert made all the faces of the Returnance expert sink. The stream of light that had been trapping him was now divided into 6, which then extended to them. "This can't continue. If it does, we'll probably be dead before we can even waste away the energy of the Divine Hall," an elder said with a heavy voice. Chapter 1553, Driven Back, 5. Ouyang Yangwen's face became extremely sunken when he heard what was said. They could have easily run amok in this world, but the appearance of the Divine Hall had turned the situation around. They, who originally possessed the upper hand, had entered an awkward position. All the Saint Emperors and Receival experts had been trapped by the azure streams of light, and they could not break free at all. Moreover, the Returnance experts suffered from the azure streams of light as well. Now that a Receival expert had fallen and Cheng Jingyun had left, the restraints on the 6 of them had become even more powerful. Ouyang Yangwen had originally wanted to waste all the energy in the Supreme Divine Hall. Once the Divine Hall exhausted all its power, the people hiding inside would all become sitting ducks. They would not be able to flee even if they wanted to. At that time, not only would they be able to kill off all the Origin Realm experts, but the Divine Hall would belong to them as well. However, Ouyang Yangwen had never thought that the situation would be reversed. Not only did they fail to waste all the Divine Hall's energy like he had imagined, but they were also forced to deal with the problems thrown at them. Even Ouyang Yangwen, who was extremely confident in himself, felt slightly pressured because he was no longer able to break through the azure streams of light now that they had strengthened. He could only loosen them by using origin energy. Not only did he need to devote a portion of his strength to keep the streams at bay, but he also needed to suppress the wound in his abdomen and prevent the power of laws from spreading. Ouyang Yangwen still barely managed to gain the upper hand while dealing with Jian Chen's swift attacks. He could no longer use pure strength to suppress Jian Chen. He was powerless to stop Tai Ta. At this moment, another miserable cry rang out. A second Receival expert from the world of Forsaken Saints had died to Tai Ta's hands. His head had been smashed by a single strike from Tai Ta's axe, dispersing his soul in the process. As soon as the protector passed away, the elders immediately felt the azure streams around them strengthen once again. Their faces dramatically changed, and even Ouyang Yangwen struggled to remain composed. If all the protectors were killed by Tai Ta, the azure streams would probably become so powerful that even the elders would no longer be able to break free. They would no longer be around to shoulder the load from the Divine Hall. At that time, only death would await them. Moreover, their world could not endure the loss of so many Origin Realm experts. "Elder Ouyang, the situation is becoming worse for us. Let's retreat for now," an elder said with a heavy heart. He glanced at the tunnel below from time to time. He had clearly already made up his mind. If Ouyang Yangwen insisted on staying, he would flee even if he had to offend Ouyang Yangwen. Ouyang Yangwen clearly understood the situation at hand as well. A sliver of disgrace flashed through his eyes as he gritted his teeth. All retreat. Without any hesitation, the other elders immediately broke free from their restraints. However, they did not immediately enter the tunnel. Instead, they all arrived before the trapped protectors and freed them from their restraints. The streams of azure light that trapped the receival experts were much weaker than the ones that trapped the returnance experts. They collapsed after a single attack from the returnance experts. With their assistance, all the trapped protectors broke free in just a short while. At the same time, Ouyang Yangwen furiously bellowed out. He forced Jianchen back with a full power attack. The sword in his hand danced about furiously. He sent a wave of sword chi toward the trapped Saint Emperors before retreating back into the tunnel with them. They all returned to their own world in horrible shape. The Supreme Divine Hall did not take advantage of the situation and attack them. It allowed them to escape. The azure streams of light could have trapped them again, forcing them to lose at least half of their experts, or even all of them, but all the Origin Realm experts in the Divine Hall would have exhausted all their Origin energy in exchange. In fact, they might not have had enough Origin energy to kill all the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. They were in a world that lacked Origin energy. It was difficult to completely recover all their spent Origin energy within several decades or a century once they expended it all. Without their support, the Divine Hall's power significantly weakened. Once the next wave of experts from the foreign world came, they would not be able to fend them off. The Divine Hall rapidly descended from the sky after the foreign experts retreated. It guarded the entrance of the tunnel by blocking it. The intense battle between the two worlds had finally come to a close. All the survivors from the four races let out breaths of relief. Many of them were joyful that they won. Many of the sainthood experts in the Divine Hall had channeled all their saint force into the Divine Hall so that it could become more powerful. Thus, they were utterly exhausted. The moment the battle ended, many of them collapsed where they were. They had used up all their power, and some of them had even used secret techniques to burn their essence blood, becoming haggard and extremely weak. Tianjian, who was controlling the Divine Hall through the Jade White Seat, and the Origin Realm experts around him all let out a breath of relief as well. A smear of paleness had appeared on Tianjian's face. He was not the only who paled. Even the Origin Realm experts around him also paled. The Divine Hall consumed energy far too rapidly. Even though only a short amount of time had passed, they had exhausted close to half of their Origin energy. If the foreign experts had not retreated, they probably would not have lasted much longer. I never thought that the world of Forsaken Saints would attack so soon. It's fortunate that I managed to refine the Supreme Divine Hall from the City Lord in time, or the outcome would have been unthinkable, Tianjian said, rejoicing. If he had come with the Divine Hall just a little later, the current situation would be completely different. I never thought that this Divine Hall would be so powerful, where even late returnance experts can't even shake it. Mo Tianyun truly is worthy of the title of the greatest human expert. His true strength probably surpassed returnance long ago. Shengguan Mu'er sighed in surprise as she observed the Divine Hall. The power of my master is beyond your imaginations. So what about returnance experts? My master could kill them easily with a single finger. When that war god of the 100 races attacked our Tianyuan continent back then, he was far stronger than this Ouyang Yangwen, yet he was still easily repelled by master. If it weren't for the fact that my master didn't want to kill the war god, how could he have escaped from master's hands? Xiao Ling pridefully. Chapter 1554. Future Survival. Everyone was amazed by what Xiao Ling had said. In reality, no one truly knew the strength of the champions of the four races from the ancient times because the cultivation realms beyond Saint Emperor had never been passed down. Any person who had reached Origin Realm, whether it be Receival, Returnance, or Reciprocity, were all known as those who had surpassed Saint Emperor. After all, there had only been 4 experts like that in the entire world. Until now, Only the sea goddess' exact strength had been disclosed among the 4 champions. Everyone was still not exactly clear as to what Mo Tianyun, Erjin's, and the winged tiger god's true strength had been. They could only deduce a simple estimate from the minimal amount of information they learned from Shaoling. However, their estimate still caused them to sigh in amazement. Everyone, the experts from the foreign world, have retreated, but the tunnel still has not completely closed. They can attack our continent at any time, so it's best if you don't leave the Divine Hall. Make sure you are ready at all times to channel energy into the structure. We can only guard this place by using the Divine Hall as much as possible so that we can prevent the foreign experts from entering our world, Tianjian said to the people around him. He slowly glanced over the Origin Realm experts around him with his resolute gaze, but his heart could not help but surge with tremendous waves. Shengguan Mu'er, Changyang Mingyue, the winged tiger god, and Tai Ta had all been his juniors in the past and much weaker than him. He had even assisted them and granted them protection. Yet, now that he had emerged from seclusion, it was as if countless years had passed in the outside world. All the people who had once been his juniors, in fact, the people he had once protected, had all reached the Origin Realm. Houston used to be a Saint King at great perfection with him, an expert who stood at the apex of the Tianyuan continent together with him. Yet now, Houston, who was roughly the same age as him, had already reached the Origin Realm, which amazed Tianjian. The Supreme Divine Hall blocked the entrance to the tunnel, but just Tianjian and the Divine Hall would not be enough to guard the entrance. The people from the foreign world might not be able to smash through the structure, but they possessed the power to push it away. As a result, the Divine Hall required the support of all the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts so that its formations could remain in operation. Only with everyone participating could they fend off the foreign experts. There was no need for Tianjian to explain any of this. They all already knew why, so they did not object to Tianjian's suggestion. They all agreed to stay behind and guard the Divine Hall. There's an even more powerful Spirit King in the world of Forsaken Saints. The reason why he hasn't come this time is because the tunnel is unable to endure his power. Once it stabilizes enough, the Spirit King will pass through and attack the Divine Hall, and the world of Forsaken Saints has origin energy, so even if the Spirit King uses up all his energy, he can recover in an extremely short amount of time. On the other hand, it is extremely difficult for us to recover. As a result, we need to save our origin energy as well as use all the resources we have, including all monster cores, regardless of class, any remains of sainthood experts, and the special crystal coins from the sea race. We need to use everything that can offer us energy. Only with every resource available will we be able to last longer. We can think of a way to completely remove the foreign threat after that, said Houston. He was extremely stern. He had mostly recovered from his wounds in the artifact space and had changed into a new set of robes. It's said that the Spirit King's strength is on par with experts at godhood. Even if we have several hundred years to gather strength, it'll be very difficult for us to fend off such a great force, and if they continuously waste the power of the Divine Hall, we will only last a few decades with all the power from the 4 races or a few years. How should we deal with this Spirit King? In ancient times, Mo Tianyun entered the world of Forsaken Saints and conducted a massacre, killing many Origin Realm experts from the foreign world, so they suffered an extremely great loss. In the end, he sealed up the tunnel between the 2 worlds, so we've fallen out with them long ago. Coupled with the battles that have happened this time, we're like ice and fire now. If we fail to guard this place, our world will be massacred. We might even be destroyed altogether. Everyone became heavy-hearted. Their joy from just repelling the invasion instantly vanished. They all understood that the Tianyuan continent could guard the entrance with the Divine Hall, but they would probably last a few decades at most. A few decades was not enough time for them to catch a breath. How were they going to survive in the future? In the years that we have left, we need to raise an expert who is powerful enough to stand his ground against the Spirit King, Tianjian said with a heavy voice as he slowly glanced over everyone. Everyone felt a heavy pressure descend. The reason why their strength had rapidly increased was due to the fact that they had obtained some legacy or that they possessed some heaven-defying heavenly resource. However, Houston and the White Tiger had already exhausted their legacies. It was impossible for their strength to jump a second time. Changyang Mingyue had only reached returnance in such a short amount of time due to the 10,000-year ice souls. However, there had only been 3 ice souls, and each one had taken 3 million years to condense. It was impossible for a fourth one to form. As for Shangguan Mu'er, she had been blessed by the world since she was the mother of a child who possessed the innate chaotic body. Her strength increased extremely rapidly, but it was impossible for her to become powerful enough to stand up to the Spirit King in such a short amount of time because she advanced slower the higher her cultivation became. My strength will not increase in a short amount of time. There's just not that many resources to support my cultivation, but there is the previous war god's corpse that has been sealed on the wasteland continent. The seal only requires the last beast fur stored within the Supreme Divine Hall for it to open. Senior Tianjian, give the beast fur to Tai Ta so that he can open the seal. He might be able to benefit from it, Jian Chen's voice rang out. He walked in side by side with Tai Ta. His robes were splattered with blood. I'll go get it right now. Tianjian's eyes lit up, and without any hesitation he immediately went to retrieve the last beast fur. Tianjian left to go to the treasury. However, the Origin Realm experts all remained where they were. They did not go with him. Uncle Xiao, you finally emerged from seclusion. I scoured the entire world in search of you. Jian Chen bitterly smiled as he looked at Houston. Houston gently sighed. Throughout all these years, I've been cultivating in the depths of the death nest in a selfless and mindless state. I had no sense of time at all. My strength has increased drastically, but it's a pity that I failed to see my son one last time. Houston's face was filled with regret and sorrow. His eyes seemed slightly empty as well. When he had emerged from the death nest, he had expanded his soul to Longevity Valley. He saw Xiaomi's grave. Just how many people in the world had to bear the pain of watching their son pass away? Chapter 1555. The White Tiger's human form. Although Houston had known long ago that his son's death would come someday and could not be changed, he still felt utterly horrible even though he had mentally prepared himself. Jian Chen sighed inside as well. Houston had not been present when Uncle Xiaomi had passed away. He was unable to personally see his son off. Houston was not the only one filled with regret. Even Jian Chen and all the villagers in Longevity Valley were filled with regret. Jian Chen had no idea how to comfort Houston as he studied Houston's expression. He understood Houston's feelings since he was a father as well. Jian Chen glanced at the White Tiger. The White Tiger was only a meter long. Its snow-white fur had been dyed red with blood and carried the strong smell of blood. In the earlier battle, the White Tiger had suffered heavy wounds as well. Although it had already healed, it had not cleaned the dry blood from his fur. Jian Chen became filled with joy when he sensed the White Tiger's current strength. He felt happiness from the bottom of his heart. He had an extremely special connection with the White Tiger. Jian Chen himself was unclear of his feelings for the White Tiger. Back then, when the White Tiger had just been born, it was by Jian Chen's side before it could even open its eyes. It had basically spent every year of its life by Jian Chen, aside from the days it spent in the Beast God Hall. Jian Chen had watched the White Tiger grow from being a cub that could not even open its eyes to its current state. They were like companions yet also like father and son. Xiaobai, I never thought that you'd obtain such a great fortune from the Beast God Hall, reaching the Origin Realm even when this world is sealed and comprehending laws as well. Your mother must be extremely happy, Jian Chen said to the White Tiger. He then paused before asking with some doubt, you've reached the Origin Realm now. Are you still unable to assume a human form? Is the winged tiger god never able to assume a human form? Hesitation appeared in the White Tiger's eyes. However, the hesitation soon disappeared, replaced by determination. Its body transformed, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a young boy. He seemed extremely valiant. His skin was very soft, just like a newly born infant. His hair was snow-white and at least a foot long, casually draped on his shoulders. His hair also possessed a mysterious luster, as if each strand was filled with power. His face, which was still rather young, possessed a sliver of resolution that did not match his age at all. It made him seem like a general who had experienced many wars. Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, Shangguan Mu'er, Xiao Ling, and Houston all became fixated on the white tiger. They had heard from the ancient rumors that the winged tiger god had always appeared in beast form and had never appeared in human form, so everyone in the world believed that the winged tiger god's bloodline was special and that it could not assume a human form even upon reaching the origin realm. However, the rumor had just been disproven before their eyes. Xiao Ling arrived before the white tiger and moved around him. Her bright eyes were filled with doubt as she murmured, "Strange, why do I feel a familiar presence on you?" Xiao Ling furrowed her brows, but she was unable to understand why. "The true name of my species is not the winged tiger god but the sacred feathered tiger emperors. We possess one of the strongest bloodlines in the world, comparable to ancestral dragons. The seal here is very powerful, but it's unable to seal up our bloodline. We're only able to assume a human form once we reach the origin realm because of our unique bloodline," said the white tiger. His voice sounded rather raw, probably due to the fact that this was his first time speaking. He was unable to utter his words very clearly. Everyone there, including Jian Chen, had no idea what an ancestral dragon was. Even Xiao Bai had no idea what an ancestral dragon was, so none of them paid much attention to it. However, the weakened sword spirits were extremely shocked when they heard about the ancestral dragons. Their hearts began to churn. What kind of legacy did he receive? How can he know about ancestral dragons? And what kind of heaven-defying species are the sacred feather tiger emperors? Why have we never heard of them? How can they possess such a powerful bloodline that is comparable to ancestral dragons? Even the sacred beast kings among the 4 sacred beasts in our immortals world do not possess such a great bloodline. Is he exaggerating? He must have learned all this from the previous winged tiger god through the legacy. What are the origins of that ancient winged tiger god? He actually knows about ancestral dragons. Yet ancestral dragons disappeared several billion years ago from our immortals world. No ordinary person can learn about them, but anyone who does know about them is definitely be an apex expert who has survived countless years or someone important with a great background. At that moment, the sword spirits truly began to treat the white tiger with importance. They had never heard of the sacred feather tiger emperors, but since they comparable to ancestral dragons, they were definitely extraordinary beings. At this moment, Tianjian returned. He made his way over from the distance, and in his hand was an impressive, snow-white beast fur. The white tiger saw the beast fur as soon as it appeared. He felt extremely close to the beast fur since it was fur that had been shed by the sacred feathered tiger emperor from the ancient times. They were of the same species, and the legacy he had just obtained came from the same sacred feathered tiger emperor. Tianjian passed the last beast fur to Tai Ta. Tai Ta held the beast fur and was filled with various emotions. The previous war god, Ergens, had been sealed up after being slain by the winged tiger god. His remains had been locked up for over 1,000,000 years. He had finally gathered the 18 beast furs and now possessed the key to removing the seal. He could let Ergens' remains return to the earth. The moment Tai Ta obtained the beast fur, he did not think about the fortune or legacy he would end up obtaining. He only thought about planning the grand burial for Ergens' remains. Aside from the beast fur, I've found a few items that will be useful to us in the treasury, said Tianjian. With a wave of his hand, various jade boxes flew from his space ring. There were over 1,000 of them. A few people opened a few boxes out of curiosity. The items inside ranged from high-class monster cores to various pills. There were many Class 9 monster cores while the rest were Class 8 monster cores. These items should have all been left behind by the former masters of this divine hall. Due to the seals on the boxes, all the items have been preserved perfectly. I don't know how long they've been the treasury, but they're still effective today, said Tianjian. Chapter 1556, Mortal Energy Fruit. Each bottle has a description of the medicine inside. Not only is there medicine for healing wounds, But there is also medicine that can recover your Saint Force. Coupled with these Class 8 and 9 monster cores, this should be enough to recover some origin energy. Tianjian pointed at the stack of boxes as he spoke. Really? Then let me try if they're tasty or not. Xiaoling's eyes lit up. She leaped up and grabbed a jade bottle that contained pills for recovering Saint Force. She gently shook the bottle and the pills rattled around inside. It sounded like there were more than 10 pills in the bottle. Without any hesitation, Xiaoling opened the bottle and poured them all into her mouth, regardless of how many pills there were inside. She chewed a little before swallowing. Everyone stared at Xiaoling. What Xiaoling was doing right now was testing the medicine. She was experimenting to see how great the effects were on Origin Realm experts. They would know very soon. Xiaoling frowned after a few seconds. She pouted and said in dissatisfaction, "They're not tasty at all, and they only recovered a tiny amount of origin energy, basically the same as not eating them." Everyone was disappointed. However, they did not become dejected. They had expected this long ago. After all, these pills had been left behind by past Saint Emperors. They might be very effective on Saint Emperors but not Origin Realm experts. Houston picked up a Class 9 monster core. Blood-red mist immediately churned from his hand, enveloping the monster core. The monster core immediately began to shrink in the dense mist. It completely vanished in a moment, refined into pure energy and absorbed by Houston. No, the Class 9 monster core doesn't have any great effects on us either. It can't recover much origin energy at all. It's better to use these monster cores for maintaining the formations of the Divine Hall. The Saint Kings and Saint Emperors can use the pills. Houston shook his head. The things that Tianjian had brought out from the treasury were unable to help the Origin Realm experts at all. At this moment, an idea appeared in Jian Chen's head. He suddenly thought about the many immortal tier heavenly resources he had obtained from the Xianhuang microcosm. Among them was a fruit that specialized in recovering energy. He wondered whether the fruit would work on them. Jian Chen immediately removed a few of them from his space ring. Each fruit was only the size of a walnut and was pure white. They appeared as glossy as white jade and looked lovely and cute. They gave off an intoxicating fragrance. The fragrance coming from the fruits attracted everyone's attention as soon as they appeared. Everyone's gazes all gathered on the fruit in Jian Chen's hands. Xiaoling could not help but gulp. Her eyes burned as she stared at the fruit. The fragrance attracted her, tempting her to eat them all in a single gulp. These are mortal energy fruit, an extremely high-grade heavenly resource. It's said that its only effects are to recover energy. I think it will really help you recover your origin energy, Jian Chen said. The sword spirits had told him all this in the past. All he knew was that they could be used to recover energy, but he would only know if they could recover origin energy after trying. "Brother, I'll try one first." Xiaoling eagerly grabbed the mortal energy fruit from Jian Chen's hands and immediately wolfed them down. Xiaoling seemed to still be unsure when she ate the first fruit, but when she was just about to eat the second, her face suddenly turned red. She felt an extremely pure and vast energy fill her body as soon as the first fruit reached her stomach. Before she could say anything, she sat down and devoted herself to refining the tremendous amount of energy. All the Origin Realm experts rejoiced. They could clearly sense Xiaoling's presence rapidly strengthen. They didn't need an explanation. The mortal energy fruit worked on Origin Realm experts and the effects were extremely impressive as well. Half a day later, Xiaoling finally roused. Her naive face immediately became filled with joy. She happily said, "Brother, this fruit really can help me recover my origin energy. I've only eaten one of them, but I've recovered all the origin energy I've used up." "Fantastic! That's just fantastic. We can last even longer with these fruits. Brother, how many of this do you have?" Changyang Mingyue also became overjoyed. She eagerly looked at Jian Chen. Everyone smiled. The appearance of the fruit gave them exactly what they needed when they needed help the most. Everyone looked at Jian Chen. They really wanted to know how many mortal energy fruit Jian Chen possessed. If there was enough, they could last for 100 years or even longer. However, if the fruit presented before them was all of it, they would not be as useful as they had imagined. Jian-Chen could not help but feel confident when everyone looked at him. He said, "Don't worry, there's definitely a lot of them. There's enough to last you guys a very long time." Jian-Chen waved his hand. Over 300 wooden boxes flew out. All the boxes had been created from the wood found in the Xianhuang microcosm. They all seemed like rough handiwork. There was nothing special about the boxes, but what they stored could be described as heaven-defying treasures. Jian-Chen had found several mortal energy fruit trees, so he had collected over 500 fruits of various grades. He took out over 300 of them all at once and shared them with the Origin Realm experts present. Tianjian was still a Saint Emperor, but since he was critical to controlling the Divine Hall, he obtained some as well. Fantastic! With these mortal energy fruit, we no longer have to worry about lacking origin energy. It's just a pity that these fruit can only be used for recovery and not cultivation, Houston said with some regret. Jian-Chen also possessed some 5-element fruit in his space ring. He had also obtained them from the Xianhuang microcosm, but their medicinal effects were too brutal. They needed to be refined into pills with other materials before they could be ingested, but he would not find anyone who could refine immortal tier heavenly resources in his Woolard, so he did not take them out. Chapter 1557. Still alive, several Saint Emperors walked in from outside. They handed over the space rings the dead Origin Realm experts from the foreign world had been wearing and also reported the casualties of the 4 races. The Tianyuan continent had emerged with a close victory. They had driven back the world of Forsaken Saints, but they had also suffered extremely heavy losses. There were several tens of thousands Saint Rulers, Saint Kings, and Saint Emperors who had taken part in the battle, close to 100,000. However, only a few thousand people had survived the battle. 99% had died on the battlefield. As for the puppets revived from Saint weapons, they had all passed away. Not a single one was left. Jian-Chen saw many familiar names among the list of people who had passed away. There were great elders from protector clans, ancestors from ancient clans, the imperial protectors or ancestral emperors from the 3 great empires, and so on. Some of the protector clans had even lost all their great elders or all their sainthood experts. Very few people survived. Only Changyang Zhu Yunshao and Changyang Zhu Yun managed to survive from the Changyang protector clan, but they were heavily injured, basically hanging onto their life with a thread. Changyang Zhu Shao and the great elders from the other 2 branches had all passed away. Jian-Chen immediately felt heavy inside when he received the news. Sorrow filled his face as tears began to well up in his eyes. He did not really care about the people from the other 2 branches, but Changyang Zhu Shao was his great-grandfather. Because of the saint's fruit in the past, he had fallen out with the 2 other branches, which were directed by Changyang Qin Yun. Changyang Zhu Shao had fought against Changyang Qin Yun in the miniature world. By using his saint-tier battle skill on Changyang Qin Yun, he was willing to risk the collapse of the miniature world. In the end, he even made the Zhu branch break away from the Protector clan before settling down in Lore City. However, he never brought up the matter of the saint's fruit for himself, which had really touched Jian-Chen. Changyang Zhu Shao was a benevolent and powerful man in Jian-Chen's heart. He was also the great-grandfather Jian-Chen respected the most. Jian-Chen felt extremely painful now that he had passed away. Even now, Jian-Chen could still clearly remember Changyang Zhu Shao's benevolent smile as well as when Changyang Zhu Shao fought against Changyang Qin Yun without any hesitation to protect him. Great-grandfather, rest easy. I will definitely personally take revenge for you, Jian-Chen murmured with a soft voice. However, he was unable to contain the deep sorrow within him. He knew that Changyang Zhu Shao's benevolent face would only exist in his memories now. He would never be able to see that face again or hear his familiar voice. Changyang Zhu Shao's soul had been wiped out. Even as a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master, Jian-Chen could not revive him. High-class Radiant Saint Masters could revive the dead, but they could not revive every single person who had passed away. There were still 2 requirements that needed to be met. Their corpse remained and their soul had not been wiped out. He could only revive them when both requirements were filled. What about my father? How's my father? Shangguan Mu'er seemed to think of something when she saw Jian Chen's face. Her face suddenly changed and she suddenly asked a question. Her voice was filled with panic. Her face was filled with worry. By now, many people had already learned about Shangguan Mu'er's connection to her father, Hao Wu. When the Saint Emperors responsible for counting the dead heard what Shangguan Mu'er had said, they immediately showed respect. Many people had seen her block over 10 Origin Realm experts by herself. Even though she was younger than most Saint Kings, her strength made all the experts from the 4 races yield to her. The Saint Emperors dared not tarry. However, when they were about to say something, Shangguan Mu'er had already charged out. She was frantic. During most of her days of peace, Shangguan Mu'er had always resented Hao Wu, unwilling to accept him as her father. However, when she realized that Hao Wu might pass away like Jian Chen's great-grandfather, she began to understand. As it turned out, she cared for her father. She did not want to see him die. The value of some things could only be truly recognized after they were lost. At this moment, Gui Hai Dao, Feng Xiaotian, and Yang Lai entered the Divine Hall with the support of a few Saint Emperors. They had not died in the battle, but they had sustained extremely bad injuries and had been incapacitated. Even now, they only managed to enter the Divine Hall with the support of several Saint Emperors. Even walking was difficult for them. They probably would not have been able to fly into the Divine Hall if it were not for the Saint Emperors. Everyone was overjoyed with their return. Quite a few of them had believed that the 3 of them had passed away, so they were obviously extremely ecstatic when they found out that they were still alive. After all, they were forces equivalent to the Origin Realm. The Tianyuan continent was in great need of Origin Realm experts. Jian Chen suppressed his sorrow and personally used his Radiant Saint Force Origin energy to heal the 3 of them. It's fortunate that we have such a powerful Divine Hall. Otherwise, we would have experienced an unthinkable outcome. The 3 of them immediately let out a breath in relief when they learned about the rest of the battle from everyone else. The 3 of them fully recovered in 5 or 6 hours after being healed by the origin energy of Class 9 Radiant Saint Force. After healing, they all consumed a mortal energy fruit to replenish their Saint Force so that they could return to their peak condition as soon as possible. The Sea Goddess, Her Majesty's body has been destroyed. She fled as a soul. I'll immediately go to the Sea Realm to see if I can rebuild her body and return her to peak condition. She'll strengthen our power, said Jian Chen. He left the Supreme Divine Hall after healing Yang Lai, Gui Hai Dao, and Feng Xiaotian. Chapter 1558. Healing Kaya. Jian Chen hovered in the sky as he observed the Tianyuan continent after the battle. He saw were many sainthood experts flying around below, hurrying about as they cleaned up the battlefield. Many of them carried corpses away to be buried. They were either filled with sorrow or were numb. The casualties had been far too many. Only 1% of all the people who had participated in the battle managed to survive. Many people had lost their family and friends. There were not many complete corpses. Basically, all of them were missing limbs or did not have a corpse at all. Their bodies had collapsed, turned into flesh and blood. The ruins of Mercenary City had become an extremely large, bottomless pit. There were densely packed cracks around the pit and 4 that were particularly thick. They cut through the entire continent, dividing it into 4 pieces. Perhaps sometime soon, the 4 great cracks would turn into 4 extremely great and surging rivers. Jian Chen gently sighed as he stared at the damaged continent. In the blink of an eye, the continent that he could not be more familiar had been reduced to this. It was quite a painful sight. Jian Chen then expanded his soul and enveloped the entire continent in a single moment. Although the battle had occurred among and around the ruins of Mercenary City, there had been many Saint Emperors and Origin Realm experts who had fought. Not only did the terrifying shockwaves split the continent, but regions millions of kilometers away were drastically affected as well. The continent had experienced an unprecedented earthquake, causing many cities and mountain ranges to collapse. However, Jian Chen's face suddenly changed at this moment. He immediately leaped onto the Ziying sword and shot off into the distance as a streak of violet light. The Ziying sword had been damaged and was covered in cracks. The sword spirits were affected by the failure of the swords, but they were still immortal artifacts. Even if they were damaged, they could still be used. They would not truly break as long as they did not have to weather any more particularly intense battles. Their power had lessened. Jian Chun crossed several million kilometers on the Ziying sword at an extreme speed. He arrived at a lone mountain in the end. It was called a lone mountain because it was the only mountain within the radius of 1,000 meters. There was nothing in the radius of 1,000 meters but desolate plains. A woman in white clothes lay on the mountain. Her appearance could not be considered as alluring, but she was still pretty. She lay on the ground with a pale face and with her eyes closed. There was a finger-sized hole between her eyes where blood flowed. This blood made her seem rather vicious and terrifying. The woman was Kaya, who had been kidnapped by an Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. Beside Kaya, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast had already shrunk to the size of a fist. It frantically buzzed around her as if it was trying to wake her up. However, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast seemed to sense something at this moment. Its body swelled until it was 3 meters long. It stood before Kaya. Its fist-sized eyes were filled with caution as it gazed into the distance, but when it saw Jian Chen, the caution in its eyes immediately disappeared. It turned back to the size of a fist before buzzing around Jian Chen. It was extremely worried, as if it was asking Jian Chen to help Kaya. Jian Chen kneeled before Kaya. His face immediately became extremely sunken as he looked at the bloody hole between her eyes. Kaya's not dead. It's very easy to cure the wounds on her body. The only problem is that her soul has sustained extremely heavy injuries. Just a strand of it remains and it's close to collapsing altogether. Jian Chen quickly checked Kaya's condition. He became very stern. Kaya's situation was extremely dangerous. She had a foot planted in the jaws of death. Jian Chen then began to use his Radiant Saint Force Origin energy to heal Kaya. Even if Kaya's body was even more injured, she could still be healed in an extremely short amount of time by a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master. The wounds on her body were not particularly deep, so she recovered very quickly. The bloody hole between her eyes also vanished, only leaving behind some residual blood. The seven-colored heaven-devouring beast fell silent as soon as Jian Chen began to heal her. It quietly lay to the side as it looked back and forth between Kaya and Jian Chen. Its eyes were filled with intelligence. It could not assume a human form, but it clearly was just as smart as a human. With a flip of his hand, Jian Chen removed a segment of amethyst spiritual bamboo. He extracted the sap and pressed it between Kaya's eyes. As soon as the sap came in contact with her forehead, it silently seeped in, healing Kaya's soul as a cool presence. The wounds on Kaya's soul could not be healed by a Radiant Saint Master. The amethyst spiritual bamboo was the only heavenly resource Jian Chen had that could deal with wounds to the soul. It had even reached the immortal tier and was a high-quality resource. Jian Chen understood just how effective it was when healing soul wounds. However, Jian Chen wasn't confident that a single droplet of sap would heal Kaya's soul. This was because her soul was not just injured. If it were not for the sliver of her soul remaining, she would be dead. As expected, not only did Kaya fail to awaken after the single drop of sap, Jian Chen could even sense that the remaining sliver of Kaya's soul did not show any signs of strengthening. Jian Chen frowned and mumbled to himself in his mind, "Why would this happen?" Even if a drop of amethyst spiritual bamboo sap is not enough for her to recover, the effects are so strong that Kaya's soul should strengthen a little at the very least, right? After a while of thought, Jian Chen took out a second segment of amethyst spiritual bamboo and used it on Kaya. However, the outcome was the same. The sap seemed to be useless on Kaya. Is Kaya dead? Even the amethyst spiritual bamboo is not enough to save her? Those thoughts crossed Jian Chen's mind. His heart felt rather heavy. Chapter 1559. A shocking sight. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He said with a deep voice, "No, Even if the amethyst spiritual bamboo sap is useless to Kaya, she still absorbs it. It should leave a mark in her head at the very least, but why can't I find any differences after using the sap? Does the sap vanish by itself after it enters her head? Jian Qin gritted his teeth after hesitating for a while. He endured his heartache as he pulled out another amethyst spiritual bamboo. He extracted the sap from it and had the sap drop onto Kaya's forehead. The bamboo was extremely valuable, and he had not obtained much of it in the Xianhuang microcosm. He had already used up quite a few of them, and after using another 3 on Kaya, he only had a few left. This time, Jian Qin paid close attention to any changes. Under his observations, he could clearly sense that the sap had no time to seep into Kaya's remaining soul fragment once it entered her sea of consciousness. It suddenly vanished, disappearing to somewhere unknown. Jian Qin was stunned. Why had the droplet of sap suddenly vanished? Where did it go? He could not understand no matter how hard he tried. Even if the sap was useless to Kaya, unable to heal her soul, it would not just silently disappear. He had used the amethyst spiritual bamboo many times, so he understood how it healed the soul. However, he had never seen something as strange as this. Where did this droplet of sap go? Jian Qin thought about this question time and time again, but he was unable to reach a conclusion no matter how much he pondered. He could not figure out why at all. Jian Qin sighed to the sky. He felt rather dispirited. He knew that he had no other method to awaken Kaya. All that he had on him that was effective on soul wounds was the sap from the amethyst spiritual bamboo. When Jian Qin unintentionally glanced over the flat land that spanned 1,000 kilometers, his facial expression immediately froze. His soul had enveloped the entire Tianyuan continent several times in the past. Although he could not claim that he knew every inch of the Tianyuan continent as well as the back of his hand, he was still familiar with its rough structure and landscape. He happened to remember the landscape here. In his memories, there had been an endless chain of mountain ranges. They stretched far into the distance and towered above all, yet a large part of the mountain range had strangely disappeared, having turned into flat plains that reached over 1,000 kilometers away. Only Kaya lay on the single mountain among the plains. What happened here? Jian Qin frowned. He was filled with doubt. Even if an intense battle had happened here and destroyed everything in the radius of 1,000 kilometers, there would have been pieces of rock at the very least. However, from his observations, it did not seem like a battle had occurred here at all. The plains and the surroundings were just far too flat. There were no signs of conflict at all. Jian Qin slowly flew down the mountain with Kaya in his arms. He landed on the ground. When his feet touched the ground, they sank. The flat surface was covered by a thick layer of dust. Has all this dust come from the mountains in the surroundings? Jian Qin immediately became extremely shocked when he reached such a conclusion. His heart churned. He could easily destroy the mountain range with his powers, but he could not avoid leaving behind a bunch of broken rocks and signs of a fight. He definitely would not have been able to make disintegrate all the mountains. Just what has happened here? Who made all the mountains disintegrate? Jian Qin became extremely stern. He understood just how powerful someone needed to be to destroy the region. He could only think of 2 people who possessed that power. First was Protector Shui from the Ice Goddess Hall, and second was the greatest god king of the god race from the Saints' world, Adriana. This was because both of them were peak godhood experts. However, Adriana had been heavily injured by Protector Shui. She was extremely weak and in a slumber. She probably no longer possessed this ability. On the other hand, according to Jian Qin's understanding of Protector Shui, she would never interfere with anything that was happening on the Tianyuan continent. She would not even glance at the continent if it was destroyed, so there was no reason for her to interfere. Is there a third expert that doesn't belong to this world apart from the 2 great god kings? Otherwise, how can this happen? Jian Qin wondered, but he did not feel like this line of thought was correct. There was nothing pointing to a third expert, like Protector Shui or Adriana, existing. This was because both the Elven God Tree and the Ice Goddess Hall had existed for countless years. They were known among the people, even though they were shrouded by a veil of mystery. However, There were no longer any organizations or supreme experts shrouded by mystery among the four races anymore. Jian Chen wandered through the region and carefully examined every minute trace. He attempted to find something that would tell him something, but he found nothing in the end. In the end, Jian Chen could only leave in doubt. However, he memorized the strange landscape. Jian Chen returned to the Supreme Divine Hall with the unconscious Kaiya, temporarily placing her in a quiet room. He knew that Kaiya was not truly dead, so he had not given up on the thought of reviving her. The seven-colored heaven-devouring beast continued to remain by Kaiya's side. Its intelligent eyes were filled with caution and alarm, clearly guarding Kaiya. After delivering Kaiya, Jian Chen left for the Sea Realm. He did not take part in the various matters that needed to be completed after the war and instead left them to someone else to deal with. The Sea Realm had become much quieter after the war against the foreign world. However, the peaceful atmosphere was suffocating and filled with deep sorrow. The Sea Realm had lost many of its sainthood experts this time. This included many ancestors of a few large clans or organizations. Many of these ancestors possessed great statuses, so their deaths had shocked the various clans. In various locations across the Sea Realm, there were many organizations and clans who had hung up a white banner to send off their seniors. The Serpent God Hall and Heaven Spirit Hall became much quieter. Both hall masters had passed away during the battle, only leaving behind a few ordinary elders and hall elders. However, they too were heavily injured, so the organizations had sustained great losses. Chapter 1560, Visiting Fairy Hao Yu. After the battle, the Serpent God Hall and Heaven Spirit Hall began to decline. Only the Sea Goddess Hall maintained its prestige. Their hall master and newly gained emperor, Yadrium, were both alive. They possessed 2 experts at the level of emperor, which was unique in the Sea Realm. At the same time, the Sea Goddess was still alive. It was said that the Sea Goddess Hall had been founded during the ancient times by the Sea Goddess herself, so the Sea Goddess Hall's influence immediately became as overwhelming as the midday sun. Jian Chen flew through the Sea Realm. He had turned into a violet streak of light and shot across the sky like a comet, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen had already expanded his soul when he had ventured to the Sea Realm earlier to observe the situation of the sea race. He found that the Turtle Clan was also shrouded by a thick layer of sorrow. In the battle against the foreign world, their Saint King elders had also taken part in the battle, but only a single person survived in the end. The rest of them, including Tai Do, had all passed away. Jian Chen rode past the Turtle Clan from 10,000 kilometers away on the Ziying sword, making way to the Sea Goddess Hall. He did not go to the Turtle Clan. There was nothing in the Turtle Clan that he cared about. The only person he had cared about was the Grand Elder, who had laid down his life to save him, and Jian Chen had already taken up the role as the ruler of the clan just to complete his final wish. Jian Chen had successfully made the Turtle Clan powerful. They had become a peak-level organization in the Sea Realm. He had also completed the Grand Elder's final wish, so after that, he cut his ties with the Turtle Clan. The Sea Goddess Hall was a majestic divine hall. It was deep blue and let out a radiant glow. It hovered in the air like a primordial beast, unintentionally giving off a certain pressure that permeated the surroundings. Even Saint Kings would be deterred by it. The experts in the Sea Goddess Hall had fallen as well. The entire structure seemed to have emptied. They had lost many Saint Kings and many Saint Ruler emissaries. When Jian Chen arrived before the Divine Hall, he was immediately recognized by an emissary who courteously bowed to him. The emissary then moved as quickly as he could to report to the Hall Master. Very soon, both Yadrium and Atlantis emerged. This time, they did not conceal their appearances at all, revealing their alluring beauty. At a closer glance, it was not difficult to tell that they looked somewhat similar. Jian Chen was invited into the Divine Hall after some greetings were exchanged. Jian Chen, we sisters were injured too heavily and were completely incapacitated, so we could only leave first. We did not last until our final moments, so we must apologize. As soon as the 3 of them sat down, Yadrium spoke apologetically. How can you say that, Hall Master? I'm happy that you could successfully escape under such circumstances. It's just a pity that my great-grandfather Changyang Zhu Shao failed to make it out alive and passed away on the battlefield. Jian Chen's voice carried some grief. If Changyang Zhu Shao had been able to make it out alive, no matter how heavily injured, Jian Chen would have been able to heal him. I never thought that the Divine Hall in Mercenary City would be so powerful that it could stop returnance experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. Jian Chen, can I ask how long the Divine Hall will last? The sea goddess illusory figure appeared in the hall as she asked Jian Chen a question. Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath and slowly released his sorrow that formed from losing family. He said, "The Divine Hall from Mercenary City is powerful, but maintaining it is not easy. It requires the support from all the Origin Realm experts and many Saint Emperors to display the might that stopped the foreign world. I've come this time to assist the Hall Master and Elder Yadrium in recovering as well as to rebuild your Majesty's body. The Supreme Divine Hall from Mercenary City requires your Majesty. I can rebuild my body, but Origin energy is just far too difficult to replenish. I might not be of much help. After all, the energy of the world in the sea realm became much thinner after my first resurrection. It will not recover even after a very long time. I can't use the spiritual springs in the sea realm again, or the energy of the world would completely vanish, making it impossible for my people to cultivate," sighed the sea goddess. Jian Chen smiled confidently. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I just happen to have heavenly resources that can recover Origin energy. Once you have revived, all you need to do is consume this fruit and you'll be able to recover your peak strength in an extremely short amount of time." As he said that, a mortal energy fruit appeared in his hand. It gave off an intoxicating fragrance. The sea goddess' eyes immediately lit up. She stared at the mortal energy fruit and asked in disbelief, "Is that true? Just this single piece of fruit can return me to my peak condition?" "I'm completely certain," Jian Chen swore. Jian Chen immediately began to move. He assisted the sea goddess, reviving her a second time. He had collected quite a few of the materials she required to rebuild her body from the Zhuaxuang microcosm, so he still had a lot left. Even 100 resurrections would not be enough to consume them all, so he did not need to worry about any required materials. In order to ensure no accidents happened, Jian Chen personally guarded the sea goddess during her second resurrection. After recovering, Yadrium and Atlantis took part as well. Since they had the experience from the first revival, the entire process happened much faster. It was successfully completed in just 7 days. After consuming a mortal energy fruit, the sea goddess had replenished all her power by the next day. The sea goddess immediately went to the Supreme Divine Hall on the Tianyuan continent after she had been revived. Jian Chen returned to Flame City after completing his tasks in the sea realm. He stood outside the Bright Moon Divine Hall, intending to visit Fairy Hao Yu. However, the entrance of the Divine Hall remained tightly shut, as if she wanted to deny Jian Chen entry. "Jian Chen, do you want me to partake in the battle against the world of Forsaken Saints?" Fairy Hao Yu's obscure voice appeared in Jian Chen's ears. She had already sensed Jian Chen's arrival, but she did not let him into the Divine Hall. Jian Chen knew that Fairy Hao Yu possessed a great background. He clasped his hands and said, "Fairy Hao Yu, I have materials that can rebuild your body. I do indeed hope that you can assist us in fending off the world of Forsaken Saints once you recover your strength. After all, you also exist on the Tianyuan continent. Probably even you are unable to keep yourself safe if the front lines fall. Jian Chen, you should go. I won't help you fend off the world of Forsaken Saints. Even ignoring the fact that I don't want to use your low-quality resurrection materials, I would not want to offend the world of Forsaken Saints even if I still had a body." Fairy Hao Yu declined without any hesitation. "Why is that?" Jian Chen asked. He did not understand her reasoning. "Jian Chen, if I've examined the people from the world of Forsaken Saints correctly, they should be spirit sages from the Saints' world. The spirit sages are a great race in the Saints' world. The spirit sages may not necessarily cause you trouble even though the people of this world are battling them, but I come from the Moon God Hall of the Saints' world. If I interfere, the Moon God Hall will definitely be dragged into the conflict," Fairy Hao Yu said. Chapter 1561. Where Hope Lies. Jian frowned. He would never have thought that the people from the world of Forsaken Saints would possess such a great background, originating from the Saints' world. Fairy Hao Yu, are the spirit sages in the Saints' world very powerful? Since the world of Forsaken Saints has origins in the Saints' world, why are they invading our Tianyuan continent? With my understanding, the people from the world of Forsaken Saints have been there for an extremely long time. If they are from the Saints' world, then their origin realm experts would have ventured to the other world already. Why do they remain there? Jian asked. After a while of silence, Fairy Hao Yu replied, the spirit sages are a great race in the Saints' world and possess great strength, but due to some reasons, many large sects and clans in the Saints' world attacked them, so they suffered heavy losses. Both of their grand prime ancestors fell, but the spirit sages are still a force to be reckoned with. They're definitely not people our moon god Hall can offend. At the same time, the people from the world of Forsaken Saints are only extremely similar to the spirit sages. I'm not certain they're actually part of the spirit sages from the Saints' world. It's just that the spirit sages are far too powerful. As long as there's the slight chance that they are, I'm not willing to take part in the battle. Fairy Hao Yu spoke sternly. She really feared the spirit sages. The moon god Hall could not afford to provoke such a powerful foe. Moreover, even if her moon god Hall did not fear the spirit sages, there was no reason for her to turn on them. She was not from the Tianyuan continent. Even though she had remained there for quite some time, she held no feelings for the continent. There was no difference if humans occupied the Tianyuan continent or the spirit sages did. Fairy Hao Yu, if the people from the world of Forsaken Saints really are a part of the spirit sages, will it become a hidden problem due to my enmity with them? Jian asked. Your enmity with the world of Forsaken Saints is like a child making some noise before the spirit sages. After all, they're a great race, so why would they go as far as to fuss over someone who hasn't even reached godhood over some small matters in a lower world? That is, unless a descendant of some important figure dies in your hands, but that basically never happens, and even if it did, the spirit sages can't do anything to you because the war god of the god clan is among you. The god clan is a peak clan in the Saints' world. When they were founded by the war god, they were known as the greatest organization in the Saints' world. Even if the great war god of the past has fallen, forcing the god clan to lose their title as the greatest, they're still not in existence that any large sect or clan can afford to offend. Jian knew that persuading Fairy Hao Yu to partake in the battle against the foreign world was no longer possible, so he ended his conversation with her and left. Jian, the seal in this world will vanish soon. At that time, the seal leading to the Saints' world will disappear as well. In my current state, it's extremely difficult for me to go to the Saints' world. I'll need your help then. You'll need to take my divine hall to the Saints' world. As long as there is origin energy, I can use a secret technique to rebuild my body in the shortest amount of time possible. Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out once more. Jian paused. He knew that his relationship with Fairy Hao Yu was not full of friendship. They were just partners in a deal at most. Fairy Hao Yu had taken Yu as her disciple because she saw potential in Jian. To return the favor, he would have to take Fairy Hao Yu to the Saints' world. Jian was obviously willing to agree to such a deal. It was just that the threat of the foreign world still lingered. Even if the seal to the Saints' world vanished, he could not leave at ease because he had too many friends and family here. They had the power to protect themselves on the Tianyuan continent, but they would not be able to preserve their lives once they ventured to the Saints' world. As a result, it was impossible for him to take all his friends and family to the Saints' world. They would remain on the Tianyuan continent, so before he left, he needed to create a safe and lovely environment for them to live in. Fairy Hao Yu, we have known each other for many years, so you should understand me a little. Do you think I can easily leave without completely dealing with the matter of the foreign world? Jian inquired. You can take all your friends and family with you to the Saints' world. Once we're there, I'll recover very quickly. At that time, I'll obviously be able to protect your friends and family. And to pay you back, I can open the gate to the God's Necropolis so that you can enter the God's Necropolis microcosm. If you cultivate in there, you'll quickly reach godhood with your talent, added Fairy Hao Yu. Jian Chen gently shook his head. He did not agree to Fairy Hao Yu's suggestion. Jian Chen had considered taking all his friends and family with him, but he did not believe they would be safe. After all, the experts in the saints' world were as common as clouds and held all the power. Even if he reached godhood, he would find it difficult to protect the people around him. Moreover, he was born on the Tianyuan continent, was a member of the humans, and was revered as their greatest expert. He carried the hopes of all of the humans on his shoulder, so how could he just leave by himself and abandon them, leaving them to face danger all by themselves? At the same time, Jian Chen did not believe that he did not have the power to deal with the foreign world. His strength could skyrocket in a short amount of time by absorbing the Yin-Yang Saint Rock. The sword spirits had told him that if he absorbed all of the rock's power, he could even reach the 9th layer of his chaotic body. According to the strength he gained each time his chaotic body progressed to a new layer, just his personal strength would reach godhood if he reached the 9th layer, even before factoring in his other powers. The only problem that troubled Jian Chen was that he could not absorb the powers of the Yin-Yang Saint Rock by himself. He required Shangguan Mu'er's support, or he would just be seeking death. After leaving the Bright Moon Divine Hall, Jian Chen remained in the City Lord's estate, keeping Yu Yu and Bai Lian company. Jian Chen had not allowed them to take part in the battle. They were very important to him, so he would remain pain for the rest of his life if they died in battle. In reality, even if they took part in battle, they would not be any great help. They severely lacked battle experience and were not as experienced as the saint rulers and saint kings who had lived for thousands of years. Brother, the foreign world is so powerful and the divine hall from Mercenary City cannot always remain there. If the spirit king from the foreign world smashes through the divine hall, what'll happen? Bai Lian asked, full of worry. Since her status was special as Jian Chen's sister, she knew many secrets. Don't worry. The Supreme Divine Hall from Mercenary City can block the tunnel for a few decades at the very least. At that time, we might not need to fear the foreign world anymore, Jian Chen smiled. There was no worry on his face. However, he was mulling over the fact that he probably should talk to Shangguan Mu'er. Sister Bai Lian, you have to be confident in your brother. Your brother's experienced countless storms of blood and been through an innumerable amount of problems. In the end, weren't they all resolved by him? I believe the threat from the foreign world won't be able to trouble Jian Chen for long. Yu Yu sat beside Jian Chen and hung onto his arm. Her face was filled with happiness. Chapter 1562. The Spirit King attacks. Jian Chen placed his hand around Yu Yu's thin waist. Yu Yu did not resist at all. She leaned her head on Jian Chen's shoulder with a smile full of joy. She wore a small pouch of fragrance on her, so Jian Chen immediately smelt a faint fragrance. The pouch contained extremely valuable herbs and flowers and could calm people down. Jian Chen immediately felt relaxed, calmer and less restless. Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath and said, "You are right. Lianer, don't worry about the world of Forsaken Saints. The Spirit King may be very powerful, but there's still a shred of hope for us. This shred of hope can only become larger after a few years or even decades. The Supreme Divine Hall from Mercenary City will be able to earn us some of that valuable time." As soon as Jian Chen finished speaking, the ground immediately began to shake, as if an earthquake was happening. Not only was the entire City Lord's estate violently shaking, but so was the entire city. An extremely powerful earthquake was happening across the Tianyuan continent. It affected an extremely large range, having originated from the ruins of Mercenary City over 1,000,000 kilometers away. The epicenter of the earthquake was there, spreading out across the entire shattered continent. Jian Chen's face froze. He said, "It's the world of Forsaken Saints attacking the Supreme Divine Hall above the tunnel. I'll head over immediately." Jian Chen could no longer afford to accompany Yu Yu and Bai Lian. He immediately stood up and left the city. "Brother, you have to be careful. Jian Chen, no matter what happens, you have to come back safely." The two women immediately followed Jian Chen out of the building. Their eyes were filled with worry and a reluctance to part with him. Even though the tunnel leading to the world of Forsaken Saints had been blocked by the Supreme Divine Hall and made it impossible for the people from the other world to cross over, they would worry every time Jianchen left. They worried that accidents would happen. Jianchen left through the space gate that had been set up in Flame City to go to the ruins of Mercenary City. It was much faster than flying over 1,000,000 kilometers for him. When Jianchen arrived, a deafening rumble constantly reverberated around. The Supreme Divine Hall, which was blocking the tunnel, was gently shaking while extremely violent streams of energy leaked out from below it. Within the streams of energy were strands of extremely sharp sword qi, causing space to shatter and collapse. Everything was turned to nothingness due to its destructive powers. The Supreme Divine Hall had stood like a mountain earlier. It had not moved even after taking on a full-powered attack from Ouyang Yangwen. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Gehai Dao, and the Sea Goddess had all been absent at that time, while all the Origin Realm experts who had been supporting the Divine Hall were heavily injured. However, Ouyang Yangwen was still unable to force the Supreme Divine Hall to move. Yet now, all the Origin Realm experts of the Tianyuan continent had recovered their strength, and Yang Lai, Guihai Dao, Feng Xiaotian, and the Sea Goddess were present. Yet, under these circumstances, the Divine Hall still shook. This all pointed to the fact that the Divine Hall was being attacked by an extremely terrifying expert. The Spirit King. Jianchen immediately thought of who was attacking the Divine Hall. Aside from the Spirit King, who had also comprehended the way of the sword and surpassed Jianchen's own comprehension, there was no one else. The current Spirit King was like a god in the world of Forsaken Saints. He had created a legend. Even Ouyang Yangwen and Xiong Zhong, who were almost at reciprocity, deeply feared him. They would obediently follow any order from the Spirit King and would never question them. At the same time, the Spirit King was like a huge mountain that weighed on Jianchen's heart, almost suffocating him. This was because he had heard the rumors regarding the Spirit King from the other people of the foreign world. Not only had the Spirit King reached mid-reciprocity, but his battle prowess was also at the level of godhood experts. He was a legendary figure. His talent was so great that it was almost unprecedented. He was the greatest genius in all of the foreign world's history, as well as the most powerful Spirit King. In just a few centuries, he had gone from a nameless figure to the supreme sovereign of the foreign world. With a single movement, Jianchen entered the Divine Hall. The atmosphere inside was extremely stern. All the Origin Realm experts were present and channeling their origin energy into the Jade White Seat. They worked together with many Saint Rulers, Saint Kings, and Saint Emperors to push the Divine Hall to its limits so that they could guard the entrance and block the path of the foreigners. Jianchen made his way over to the Jade White Seat and gently placed his hand on it. His chaotic force surged into the seat without any restraints at all. Since Jianchen's chaotic force was special, the shaking Divine Hall gradually calmed down. However, the deafening booms continued to ring from the blocked tunnel. As the Divine Hall gradually stabilized, the great expert from the foreign world also seemed to understand that he was unable to smash through the Divine Hall. He stopped attacking and the great booms suddenly stopped. Everyone fell silent within the Supreme Divine Hall. After seeing how they were not going to be attacked again, they all let out a breath of relief and pulled back their hands. However, every single one of them was extremely stern. That should have been the Spirit King of the foreign world. He really is strong. Just his attacks alone required all of us to work together. It's fortunate that he didn't take part in the battle earlier, or we would not have been his opponent even if we worked together. We would not have been able to injure him, Feng Xiaotian said grimly as he frowned. These attacks have already surpassed reciprocity. Only experts at godhood can stop the Spirit King. If we want to use the Divine Hall to stop attacks from experts at godhood, the origin energy we need will increase by several-fold. We do have the mortal energy fruit, but they will only last us a few decades at most. If the Spirit King continuously attacks the Divine Hall, will last an even shorter amount of time. We might finish off all the fruit in just a few years, Yang Lai said in a solemn voice. In such a short time frame, it's impossible for any of us to break through to godhood. Continuing to remain defensive won't work, said Changyang Mingyue. Her face was filled with worry. After a moment of hesitation, she gritted her teeth and said, I'll go back and find Protector Shui to see if she has any methods of making me break through to godhood in the shortest time possible. With that, Changyang Mingyue left the Divine Hall and traveled to the Ice Goddess Hall with lightning-like speed. Jianchen stared at Changyang Mingyue's back as she grew further away. He was probably the only person who knew Protector Shui's true strength. As a supreme god king who even managed to kill the greatest god king of the god race, she definitely would have valuable heavenly resources on her. He was extremely willing to have Changyang Mingyue break through to godhood. Protector Shui may not interfere with the matters of this world, but my sister is clearly valuable to Protector Shui. If Protector Shui assists my sister and increases her strength, that shouldn't count as interfering, Jianchen thought. He then looked at Shangguan Mu. After a while of hesitation, he walked over and said, Mu, there's something I want to discuss with you. Shangguan Mu's face was neutral. She only slowly hesitated before nodding in the end. She left the Divine Hall with Jianchen. 1,000 kilometers away, Jianchen and Shangguan Mu stood above the clouds, like a match made in heaven. Mu, everyone understands the strength of the foreign world and the Spirit King extremely well. Even if we don't include the Spirit King in the picture, just Ouyang Yangwen is hard enough to be dealt with. In a few decades, when we use up all of the mortal energy fruits, what will we use to stop the next attack? My sister may have gone to find Protector Shui, but I don't think her chances of success will be great. As a result, the only way for us to achieve victory lies with us. Jianchen looked at Shangguan Mu as he spoke in a stern voice. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.